Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Jamie Dean, and this is Scott. Scotty, what's happening?
Hi. Hey, everything's all hunky dory over here.
Hunky dory. Oh, that's good to hear.
Yes.
We're back doing another retrospective. We had a really good time doing our Zelda one, which you can find
Mm.
over on the YouTube channel. And we thought we might do a few more of these. So we're going to do another one today. This time we're doing a retrospective discussion of the Nintendo 64, as you can see arrayed before you here. This is a special one for me, Scotty. I don't know
Hmm.
what your connection or relationship is to the Nintendo 64 in particular, but for me, when I think, when when you get to a certain age like us, right? And you
Yeah.
start to think about video games, your mind tends to wander backwards, right? It goes back in time. That's at least it
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
anyway, and I think it's true for a lot of people who are sort of in their approaching their 40s and beyond. Um,
Yeah.
that this console is where my mind goes back to when I think about video games. It's this era of video games. When I think of video games, is this is what I think of. I think this is was a really special period of my life, and this was sort of like where I went from thinking video games were pretty cool and liking them as a thing, a fun thing to do, to like absolutely falling in love with video games. Was the Nintendo 64 did that for me. What was like your kind of relationship with this one in particular? Were you like a big 64 fan? Did you own one? Did you love it, hate it?
Well, I owned one absolutely, and I did absolutely love it. Um, I spent many a few years after having got my first Nintendo 64. And I say first because
Oh, you had several.
I'm on to my second
Oh, right.
right now because I was stupid in my youth and sold my 64 in
Yeah.
my early 20s. Um,
Yeah,
big
I don't
mistake,
own mine. I
but
mean, mine's
yeah.
long gone, and I think I don't currently own one. But because I love it so much, I think this is. I'd like to reacquire one of these. Um, I remember like when we got this first up, like we had an NES, right? All
Yep.
the way up until the Nintendo 64 was released. So I completely missed the SNES era, the Sega Mega Drive slash Genesis era. Like that
Yep.
whole like
Wow.
16-bit era was like,
Early 90s.
yeah, gone. I have no touchstone for that whatsoever. And our NES finally sort of gave up the ghost in about 1997. So it was about a year after the 64 release. And I remember my dad sort of seeing this and liking the look of it because it had first person shooters on it, right? Which is what he liked. And I remember him saying to my brothers and I that if we could save up our pocket money for half of the cost of the Nintendo 64, that he would pay for the other half and we'd get one, right? And
Yep.
so my brothers and I would like we were like stockpiling our like birthday money and chore money, and we're like hoarding this shit like a dragon. And I think like over the course of I don't know how long, several months, many months, we must have got together like $50 or something like that between us, and we like handed this over. And I think Dad very graciously was like, okay, well done, boys. And, like, took on the rest
Yeah.
of it. And I
Yes.
will always remember the day that Dad brought home that Nintendo 64 box, that console box with Mario Kart and GoldenEye were the two games that he had with it. And I can still remember the house that I got this system in had like 70s orange shag pile carpet, and we had like a really old 70s like that like wood finish laminate TV
Yeah. Yeah.
unit
Yeah.
and the CRT TV in there. And I can remember the smell of the room, and just sitting in the lounge room unboxing this thing was like fucking magic, man. Like it was so
I
cool.
don't think the system's compatible with our house.
Yeah, it's looking back on it, yeah, a little bit. But that memory is just like etched into my brain, and that was the start of like so many amazingly good memories around this particular console for me. Like this is why I have
Mm.
such a special fondness for like couch multiplayer games, right? Because the
Mm.
64 was kind of my console, and I absolutely loved it. Should we get into it, Scotty? Should we start taking a little
Oh,
walk down
we
memory lane
shall.
here? This is going to be a super
We
nostalgic
shall.
one. This is going to be great. All right, let's move on from that and let's take a look at the console itself. So, June
Hmm.
96, it was first released in
Yep.
Japan. We saw it in the West over here not until March 97 for us in Australia. September 96, the US got it, but
Yep.
much later for us. So the 64, like, just looking at that picture right there, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's not a very like if you take the shape of the controller out of the equation, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty kind of bland looking thing, isn't it? I think it's like grey and black, and I know that was sort of Nintendo's kind of MO to some extent up until this point, but they
They've never
weren't
certainly
really.
gone as dark as that.
Yeah, that's
The
true.
dark charcoal grey.
Yeah. There was a lot of things I felt about the 64, and we're going to get into this as we get further into this retrospective, as you'll see. I think Nintendo were going with the 64 for a little bit of an image change, I feel. A little bit of a, hey, we're not just a toy. This is not just a thing for kids and children kind of vibe with some of, especially the titles that they ended up releasing on the 64. I think they was really angling for, we accommodate for there's something for everyone on this thing. It's not just a kiddie toy,
Yep.
which, we know that the NES and the SNES were not, but that's sort of the perception. Like you said, to survive the massive video game crisis,
Yeah,
they started marketing it as a toy specifically.
Yep.
And I think they were like really trying to throw. Where have you gone? You've disappeared. Now I'm just looking at.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Come back to me, Scotty.
Am I here?
Yeah, you're here.
Cool. I don't know what the hell happened there.
I think you must have accidentally hit your change scene key.
Oh, all right.
And now you completely throw them off the train of thought. Fuck's sake. I think they were trying to show they were for big boys too, basically. Like,
yes.
It was for big kids and kids. Let's take a bit of a look at what was going on with the actual console. So the 64, I think, is most memorable for a lot of things that it did first, right? A lot of things that we hadn't seen before in, the home video game market came along with this particular console. So the first one, the most obvious massive selling point of this thing was it had 4 controller ports that had never, to my understanding, never been seen before this console. Is that right?
Not without a multi-tap.
Yeah, not without some other extra
some
peripheral, and certainly not, with a software library that had largely been built with that in mind, right? Like the NES and SNES, their multiplayer experiences were largely 2-player based, right? Because that's what the console was built for. This introduced 4 people for the first time sitting around a TV in a lounge room playing all together, which when you think about it, right, it's kind of fucking crazy that you think about the 4-player split screen on what size CRTs did we have back then? What was it, like?
Jesus,
27-inch CRT or something like that.
Oh, that was on the top end of the spectrum.
So you think about like 4 people sitting around squinting at these tiny little boxes on this whole screen. But man, it was good. It was crazy good. Like having everyone be able to play the same game at the same time was amazing. Like this was like the slumber party king, this console, I think. So that was the first thing that, had never been done before that this brought in. 64-bit CPU, obviously, right there on the name.
Yep.
Back when numbers of bits meant something, or we cared about numbers of bits.
Yep. Or Sega's blast processing, which they tagged onto the Genesis and Mega Drive.
Yep.
No one knew what the fuck blast processing was. Sega didn't even know. It was just a marketing ploy.
What was Sega's console they brought out that they were marketing as a 64-bit console, but it was actually just 2 32-bit processors? What was that?
230. See, I thought that was No. It was more. I thought it was the Dreamcast that was 2 64-bit processors to get the 128-bit.
Right. Okay.
That was my recollection because after the Genesis or Mega Drive, as we know it in Australia, there was the Saturn.
Yes. Oh, maybe it was the Saturn. Maybe the Saturn's the one I'm thinking of.
There was the Saturn.
I think that's might be the one I'm thinking of.
And then the after and the Dreamcast after it, and the Saturn came out at very weird points.
Yeah.
Which tend to spell Sega's sort of downfall.
Yeah.
They
was
were
the
sort of
beginning of the end
floundering
for
after their
Sega.
huge console war.
But this is the first time we'd seen a home console like, and this leads into the next point, 3D. Like really, like we had some kind of pseudo 3D on the SNES at the very tail end of it, right?
With Star Fox or Star Wing as it was
Yes.
called in Australia because of legal reasons.
Yes.
Another company had the patent on the word Star Fox. So
is that right? I was going to ask you why is it called something different here.
So
That's right.
another company at the time in the early 90s or in the 90s had a patent legal rights to the word Star Fox. I don't think they were video game related or whatsoever, but it just meant that Nintendo couldn't release a product called Star Fox here in Australia, which is why Star Fox on
anything
the
Star Fox related,
Super
we get
Nintendo,
weird names
it was called
for things.
Star Wing, and then we got Lilac Wars on the 64 instead of Star Fox 64.
That's right. We had like a lot of like F-Zero on the SNES was kind of like a weird pseudo 3D but not really kind of game.
2.5D.
Yeah, right. We had Pilot Wings was another one. Dom saying Donkey Kong Country was another one that had sort of like that pseudo 3D models in a 2D kind of worldish. Like they were playing around with some ideas, but this is the first time we really had the horsepower in a console to do true actual 3D gaming, you know? And just to think about that for a second, like the first 3D games on a home like that's crazy. Like no wonder people were like gobsmacked when they saw things like Mario 64 and you know, those initial releases, right? Because we hadn't seen anything like that before. And you look at it now and you think, fucking hell, you know, it's a bit rough, but back then, it was mind-blowing stuff. Mind-blowing. Analog stick on a controller. Obviously, Atari had done a little bit of this, like way back in the day.
Analog, they really gave an analog stick. It's like 3-4 inches tall,
like a plain joystick sort of thing. But
pretty much.
This is like
you could whole fist it.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. I think that's the way those were designed, right? But this is the first time we saw them on an actual controller that's, you know, like what we typically think of as a video game controller. We hadn't seen a joystick on one of these before, an analog stick, which obviously lent into the 3D gaming space. They needed something to give us like that full range of motion. So we'd never seen that before. The Z trigger, the Z trigger, like for shooters was amazing.
That was
actually have a trigger. You sort of forget about the Z trigger and how that like totally not changed the way that you played FPSs, but just changed the way that they felt to play. You know, I thought that was a real unsung sort of hero of the 64 was the Z trigger, and of course now the Z trigger has sort of gone the way of the dodo with modern game.
And been replaced. Well,
modern game controllers they aren't sort of built in a way that can really facilitate a Z trigger in the way that the 64 did.
No, because because pretty much nearly every controller that sort of comes out now, with the exception of the Wii remotes, has been geared towards two hands either side of it.
That's it.
Whereas the 64 was, you know, like a hand straight up the middle, and the other to hold onto it. So it's
it was a weird, like trying to accommodate for. Weird. They were kind of like trying to accommodate for everything with that controller, weren't they? Like,
you
know, not completely successfully in all ways, but certainly that classic hand in the middle, right hand on the right side. That was the grip, you know, and for that, the trigger was great. Rumble Pack. Had we seen anything like a rumble pack before the 64? Had we had controller rumbling feedback before?
Not within, as far as I'm aware, not within any controllers.
No,
not
I think
within any
like arcades used it a bit. Like, you know, very.
They certainly had like force feedback. Like you play any one of those shooting games with an actual gun, and you're getting knocked about a bit.
Yep.
But
the seats that rumble in the like NASCAR and that sort of thing. Like, this is the first time in a home console we'd actually had some sort of like tactile feedback through a controller, which again now is everywhere and so commonplace now. Every controller has rumble, but this is where it started. An expandable RAM, which they brought out later on. The first console, I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, that you could actually increase the memory capacity, so you could play more complicated, better looking games as they were released.
Without turning it into almost a whole new console.
Yeah,
Because
without Frankensteining it.
The Mega Drive had its attachments, its peripherals. So it was a 16-bit console, and shortly after its heyday, to keep it sort of going and enter the realm of CD-based games, they added the Sega CD, or Mega CD in Australia, and then they ended up making an attachment called the 32X.
Yep.
Which is what I think you're thinking of possibly as well, before, with two 16-bit things to make it 32-bit. The games were more complex in nature, but not necessarily better. It had a small library, and there was some games that actually required you to have a Sega CD and 32X connected at once.
They didn't sell many copies of those games, I imagine.
I think there was only 5 of them, if I recall correctly. I think there was only 5
of them ever made, and they've still got a couple left sitting in the warehouse.
It was them trying to keep their console going.
Yes.
Do you before think they figured out the next step?
Do you think the 64, when it came out, do you think it was kind of like the start of the end for Sega? Do you think this is the console that kind of shot them through the heart to some extent, and they sort of just were in their death throes by the 2000s?
No. Well, see, I think when the 64 came out, in my sort of view, Sega was left behind.
Yeah, and
it was really all everyone could talk about was, are you going 64 or PlayStation?
That's right. Yeah. And Sega wasn't even part of the discussion at that point.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And
that's where Sony kind of muscled in and went, right.
And just to the point of that, so to give you for those that don't know, a little bit of history as to what also birthed the 64.
Yes, this is a great story.
So, when in the Super Nintendo's era, Nintendo were experimenting with CD-based technology, because that's where things seem to be headed. So they partnered with Sony and Philips, or is Philips a subsidiary of Sony? I'm not sure. But they partnered with Philips and Sony, and they ended up doing a couple sort of consoles came out of it. One famously is the Philips CDI.
Oh yes,
which used CD-based technology, and Nintendo didn't really have too much to do with it, other than they licensed them their characters. So we got some
good Zelda games.
some good. We got a trio of some of the best Zelda games.
Oh yeah,
no one ever played.
Classics.
And some Mario ones as well, but. On the other side of it, they were working on, because they were partnered with Sony at the time, and Sony and Philips knew CD tech and how to make that work. They created this little thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Nintendo PlayStation.
Interesting. Okay. Yep.
And that's what it was designed to be. It was a console, a CD-based NES, a Super Nintendo, CD-based Super Nintendo. And they made like a prototype or two. Actually, I think last year or the year before, this prototype was actually bought by a very rich man who has a lot more money than me.
Yep.
So it's part of sort of video game history. But so Nintendo actually didn't like what was sort of made. They thought they didn't like the whole CD-based technology. They were in love with their cartridges.
They wanted to stick with the cartridges in the end, didn't they? They were sort of flirting with the idea, but then they're like, no, we got the cartridges.
Yeah, we'll have a little soiree into this field, but we'll stick with cartridges. And then they started working on what was called the Ultra, or the Ultra 64, and then they later renamed it just simply Nintendo 64. But Sony, they having worked with Nintendo on the Nintendo PlayStation and the CDI, they got a glimpse into what it takes to make a video game console. And in a very poetic fashion, Nintendo
Birthed their
arguably
own
birthed
competitor.
their greatest enemy in the console
Yeah.
wars. They birthed their greatest enemy.
And that was the birth of many, many schoolyard arguments that I remember being a part of. I'm sure you do as well if you were in high school, anywhere in sort of 97, 98, 99. Wow, did we get into some heated discussions. So, should we get in some games, Scott? Now that we've looked at the console itself, let's have a look through some games. We've picked a few games here. We've both sort of picked some that are special to each of us. We've got just a host of other highlights from the console's long history. This is by no means an exhaustive list, okay? So I just want to get, if your favorite game on the 64 isn't here, then
it wasn't that good.
I'm kidding. Listen, I can sit here and talk about the Nintendo 64 for 6 hours quite happily, but Scott and I are old men and we need to sleep. So we've had to cull it down to just sort of a smattering of the highlights. But hey, look, if you're in the chat at the end, we'll stick around and see if we missed any that were your favorites. So let's go into it, Scott. They roughly, I believe, loosely in order of release, going with US release dates, Western release dates.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So, first and foremost, we get the launch of the console in the US, September 1996. It launches with a paltry two games.
Titles.
Right? Yep. This thing comes out with 2 games, which is like, if that happened now, can you imagine the fucking uproar that there would be of a console, brand new, much anticipated
major console too, not a tiny forgettable third. Yeah,
launched
one
with
that no one
2 titles,
knows about.
right? So they were largely going on, I think, the birth of 3D gaming, right? And looking to put their spotlight character Mario into the 3D sphere, and we got Super Mario 64, right? The absolute classic. This was, look, I've gone on record before saying that I'm not a huge Mario fan, right? I was not I didn't play Mario 64 on release. I didn't get a Nintendo 64 when the console was released. I came into the 64 a little while after it was released, and so the huge hoo-ha around the Super Mario 64 entry in the Mario series, I kind of missed it. And having not really grown up with Mario, wasn't terribly interested in it either. Did you experience this in its heyday, like when the 64 had just been released, when it was like when this was the big thing, or did you experience it later?
No, I experienced it later because I got my 64 Christmas of 1997.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So very, very close to the same time as I got it. Yeah.
Yep.
So
I got it Christmas 97. In fact, I actually managed to track down. I got a bundle called the Nintendo 64 Twin Controller Pack.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
And this thing fetches about $600 unopened nowadays.
Holy moly.
And all it was is when you opened this box, it just has the standard Nintendo 64 console in its own box with a separate controller in its own box. So it's basically you just bought
with two
the
boxes
2 items. It was 2 boxes in it. Yeah, you bought But it was fancy. I remember getting it in talking my mum into getting it for me for Christmas. So I knew I was getting it, and I got a few games that came with it. One was very much Super Mario 64. But I was a fan of Mario prior to this. I had played Super Mario Brothers 1 and 3.
Yep.
So I was very much looking forward.
Seeing
it did. It did. I actually had played it. Remember back in the day when stores had the booth set up? The
Yeah, I
big
miss those
console
days, man.
cabinets where you'd be like 12th in line
Yep.
just to have a go.
Just have 20 seconds with
It's
fucking some game that's not coming out for another 6 months.
Yep, yep. And that's where I got my first sort of taste of Super Mario 64.
Yeah,
That's where I
right.
was. I
What was
remember
that
just
moment
roll.
like? Seeing like a 3D game on a console and it being Mario. What was it like playing that in on that booth for the first time?
It was crazy. It was real. And the thing is, I was amazed at it. And all I was doing when I was actually playing was just running around the courtyard outside the castle. I didn't know
Yeah,
where I was going. I didn't
yeah.
know what to do. I'm just like, oh my god, it's Mario, and he's weird looking. He's
He
weird
looks like
looking.
me, 3 dimensional.
Like I have a square fist. Like, but yeah, it was totally
Isn't it
surreal.
weird how you only sort of like see all those imperfections now? Like back then, when you saw it for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first time, you didn't see the blocky nose or the square
No,
fist. Or
no, you
it
didn't
was
see
like
the
it was like
the
this
hard to
looks like
control
photo
nature of
fucking
it.
realistic. This is insane. Yeah, that's
Yep,
amazing. That
yep. And you
wow,
like
what a
used to
cool
play
memory.
with
That's
his
cool.
mustache in the title sequence, and like
Oh,
that
that's
was
right.
really wow.
I think
Yeah,
that little intro area where they just plop you in outside the castle was a bit of a stroke of
yeah,
genius. It was like a little mini tutorial without being a tutorial, like
yeah, yeah.
it's a go at your own pace, play around in here because it's like for a lot of people, most video gamers, right? That's their first encounter with a 3D video game. First
Yep.
encounter using an analog stick to control a 3D character in a
Yeah,
3D
yep.
space, right? So rather than sort of like I don't know, stepping you through this sort of tutorial. It was just like, here's a space where you can't really get hurt. Just run around and experience what this new control scheme is like. I think it was actually really fucking clever. And when you were ready, when you thought you would, okay, I think I've got the hang of this now, you could walk up to the castle and off you go into the adventure, right?
Yeah.
I think that was really, really well done in that particular game. Like, to have it laid out that way for
Yeah.
people's first encounter with 3D.
Yep.
But
Yep.
obviously a classic. I mean, this is like, a fucking cockroach, this game. It's like, it's around. People still love it. People still play it.
Yeah, yeah.
People speed run it. It's got a massive speed running scene.
Interesting fact. I think the current record for speed running Super Mario 64, collecting all 120 stars, is 1 hour and 36
That's
minutes.
fucking crazy, town. That's
That's
insane.
that's with the use of like glitches and other little
Yep.
nifty tricks to skip through the
Anything and
levels.
everything at your disposal.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
pretty
think the
much.
controls, the controls have aged pretty, they're not, if you're going to play it now, it's not the best control scheme in the world. But for the first attempt at controlling something like Mario in a 3D space, giving Mario that feeling that Mario has, that kind of slidey, momentum-based movement that we all know Mario. Like we all
We all love and hate Mario.
well, yeah, I hate. A lot of people love
to
Sam in
some
particular.
degree, yeah.
But transferring that feeling into a 3D space, like I think they did a really good job on the controls. For the first foray out into this new 3D realm that we're stepping into, like hats off to them that that it's
Yeah.
still like you can play it and still like, oh, this is a little bit rough, but it's playable. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
playable
yeah.
and enjoyable, and you can move Mario around, and he's got
Yeah.
like it's one of the most acrobatic sort of games I think Mario's ever had.
Yeah,
Super
yeah.
Mario 64.
And just as a testament to how much they hit the nail on the head with Mario and how he controls in the 3D space is Mario has not changed terribly much till now from then.
Yeah,
Like if you could play Super Mario 64 and
It
that's
sets
the
you
only
up.
Mario you game could have played, you can play Odyssey
Yeah.
now because he controls exactly. He might have a few more tricks up his disposal,
Yeah.
but he controls
The animations
almost
are a bit more
identically.
slick and transition.
Oh yeah, they're way
basic,
slicker. It's a lot smoother, but the
the basic
basic,
foundation is there, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, a classic. I think deservedly so. I think it hasn't aged as well as, and that's the problem with this early 3D era is a lot of the games haven't aged terribly well. But I think this was an important game. I didn't terribly like it. I'm not a Mario fan. I didn't really like the gameplay in Super Mario 64, but I respect it, for what it was. You know what I mean? Like a really groundbreaking sort of landmark title. The other title that came out alongside Super Mario 64, we got Pilot Wing 64. And I think this is funny, like this naming convention of adding 64 to everything. Like it's like, just to remind you which console this goes with, that we've got the Nintendo 64 logo in the corner, but we're also going to slap 64
with an arrow pointing to it.
Yeah, and we're also going to slap 64 on the end of every single title on the fucking console. Everything is something 64. Just so you know. Did you know this game is 64 bits?
See, that's the thing. When I first saw it, I'm a bit of a dodo of a kid, but I considered it to be the 64th game in the series. Like, so yeah, like,
that's funny.
Play Super Mario 64. Like where are the other 61 Mario titles, or 50 something other Mario titles
up to do.
before then? Because I didn't know about 64-bit or anything like that. I just saw a new Nintendo and didn't really notice the whole 64 number on it, even though it's right next to it. Yeah. I just saw Nintendo and that was it. The big red and white logo. But yeah, it's an interesting naming convention. Certainly memorable.
Yeah, we'll give them that. Now, Pilot Wings. This is one of the sort of rare games that's going to be on this list, Scott, that I don't think either of us have played.
I never got to play Pilot Wings
either. Is that right? Yeah.
No.
So, did you play the SNES Pilot Wings?
No, I didn't even know there was a SNES Pilot Wings. Oh. No, I did not. I pretty much know nothing about Pilot Wings, unfortunately.
So Pilot Wings was kind of like how do you describe it? It's they even based one of the sports resort games on Pilot Wings. Wasn't there like a game where you were cruising around in a glider or something, going through?
You dived, skydived.
Oh, was it skydiving? When it was like a plane or a glider or something like that.
Yeah. No, I don't recall there being any glider or plane bit, but there's a bit where when you first start up Wii Sports Resort, you
yes, yeah, no, that's not
dive
what I'm
out.
About. Although I think there is that in this as well. I think there are a few little winks to Pilot Wings in Wii Sports Resort, but it's essentially like a fly through the rings kind of aerial game, taking off, landing these little what are they called? They've got a word. They're called something. Chat, if you know what they're called.
Gyrocopters.
Gyrocopter. Yeah, we'll go with that. These little aircraft, and it was like not a flight sim, but like a flight sim light. I don't know. It had a few little different activities.
Arcade style flight.
Yeah, an arcade flyer. There was a few little modes that you could play. Again, I'm speaking only through osmosis. I've never played it myself. But yeah, interesting little, like an interesting pick for a launch title alongside Super Mario. I think it's probably like playing on, like again, people's attachment to the SNES title. I think.
Yeah.
Having not had that attachment, I had no interest in it. But
no, I totally thought it was an original sort of game, just to show off like the capabilities of the system. Here we have a great like Mario. With Mario, we have a single person ground based gate-based game.
That's true. I think
have an aerial.
You're right. Yeah, we've definitely
3D space.
Yes, flying around a 3D space. You're right. That would have had to have been it. Something to show off the 3D nature of things now. I guess what better way to do that than in a plane, which you hadn't really experienced before, even in Star Fox on the SNES. Even Pilot Wings itself on the SNES didn't really compare to Pilot Wings 64 in that regard. Dom, you're telling me I've got some audio issues. I'm currently in a running battle with my Windows audio settings that keep lowering the volume of my mic, so I'll keep an eye on it. Thanks for pointing it out, bud. Now, so we didn't have any attachment to this particular game. The next one, however, Scotty, was one of my absolute favourites on the console, coming shortly after launch in November 1996, Wave Race. This would be one of my favourite racing games ever. and still is. I replayed this on the channel recently and was really surprised at how well this game holds up, how good this still is. Did you have much to do with this one at all, Scotty?
I never had a copy of it, and I
Race.
never got to borrow a copy of it. But it was one of the games I got to play in the little
Look at that
64
water. Look at it.
kiosks
Look at the fucking water.
in department stores.
This water, like the water effects, I remember in those throwdown arguments we would have on the schoolyard about Nintendo versus PlayStation and which one looked better, right? This Wave Race 64 was a game that I would use to champion the graphical power of the Nintendo 64 because of the water effects and the water physics in this game. And they are so good. And they are still very good. Even now, even to this day, they are still... I don't know. It's just there's something about them that's kind of timeless. They really hold up. And so we got this game fairly early after getting the console because my mum was a big racing game fan. So we owned a lot of racing games for the 64. The 64 was kind of spoiled for racing games. It had a lot of good racing games. But this was one that was a bit offbeat. It wasn't like cars driving around a racetrack, right? Which I tended to think was, as a visual thing, fairly boring. This was something I could get into, and oh man, we put some fucking hours into this game, my brothers and I. You know when you just play a game so much that you start to come up with your own like games within the game. Sam was talking about this the other day about like, you know, inventing modes for GoldenEye and things to keep yourself sort of entertained. We would do this with Wave Race. We'd go around the courses backwards and see how quickly we could do that. We'd play Demolition Derby with the jet ski, like all these different little modes that aren't really meant for the game.
Not really in the game.
As well as just the racing, because the racing is great. And it's amazing how much of a leveler the water makes things, because the water is fucking tricky to navigate, right? You can't it's not like just driving around a racetrack. You're just like bouncing up and down. Like, so regularly you're losing all traction, and that changes things significantly. If you've never played Wave Race 64, you don't mind a race game, this is on the Switch Online. If you've got the expansion pack subscription, where you've got the access to the Nintendo 64 library, this is on there, which that trailer we just played was from. Go and try it. It is absolutely brilliant, and I love it to bits. It's one of my... it's just a very, very special game for me, and I love it a lot. Good old Wave Race. Now, the next one, Scotty, is one that you requested on the list, and that's Killer Instinct Gold. Scott, did you own this?
I owned it.
I
owned it. I got mine secondhand from a.
I cede the floor to you, sir, because I think I like the look of it. I remember picking it up and looking at it in rental stores and thinking, "Fuck, that looks cool." Yep. But knowing that I was not very good at fighting games, always put it back and never really. I think I might have played it once at a friend's house because they rented it out. So yeah, I don't have a lot to say about Killer Instinct. So go for it. Tell us why this is so special to you.
Oh, wow.
November 96, we're talking.
I can't believe it came out in 96. See, I thought it came out much later. So an interesting point. Look at it. It's actually a port of Killer Instinct 2. So Killer Instinct 2 was an arcade-only title. And it actually had some more full motion FMVs or full motion videos with some of its characters, like their intros, and it had a bit more I guess sort of 3D elements and layering with its backgrounds. Its backgrounds are a bit more dynamic.
Yes.
And they sort of had trouble porting that to the 64 because of its limitations. And so they had to sort of remove the sort of FMVs, full motion videos, and they sort of made do with some of making less of some of the background stages of the game. But yeah, it was a so it's basically just Killer Instinct 2. It's just with a few big differences. But yeah, it was. Oh, it was a.
Did you like it? Even
Wow.
though you owned it, did
Oh,
you
I
like
loved it.
You
I,
loved it.
I
Yep.
loved it. I regularly played this game. I regularly. I had my favorite characters. Two of which are present on the very front cover.
Yes. Yep.
So Fulgor, which is the big cyborg on the left, and Tusk, which is the barbarian on the right,
Nice.
and he was my favorite
Yep.
actually.
I was going to say, I bet Tusk is. Yeah.
Yeah, Tusk was my favorite. Not just because I like barbarians, but also
You fucking
he had,
love a barbarian, man.
he
You
did
love a barbarian.
he did like the Street Fighter Dragon Punch or Shuriken with his freaking sword. So he spun around with his big ass broadsword. But yeah, there were some characters who I just could not get a handle on, but he was not one of them. But yeah, it was an awesome game. It was, it had just like the, revisiting the sort of characters, some of the characters from the first Killer Instinct. It had a lot of massive half and full circle motions with fighting.
Yep.
Yeah, Killer Instinct.
Would you say it was an approachable fighting game, or was it a combo-tastic?
No, it's a combo-tastic sort of game. It's not in the vein of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat where anyone can just pick up and
I wouldn't call them pick up and play games. So it was more hardcore than them. Shit.
Yeah, okay. No, it was
probably glad I put it back on the shelf those times. I picked it up.
It was harder to pull off stuff than certainly them. Particularly if you want to do finishes.
Yeah,
or like what the Killer Instinct equivalent is to a fatality in Mortal Kombat. They required more work, and I still to this day have only ever done one by accident. I could never get my head around how to do it because you had to sort of set them up in the round preceding it.
Yeah, okay.
So you had to win in the round before, but during that round, you had to start setting it up by like holding particular buttons or making sure you didn't use certain attacks in order to allow you to execute the finisher at the right perfect moment. It was just a bit too much variables in stake. I prefer the whole beat the shit out of them until finish him pops up. And
Sam's calling this Fisher Price my first combo. Obviously disagrees with your intense difficulty tag.
Well, that's okay because there's a lot more complex fighting games out there. But
True.
as far as it wasn't as easily approachable as
no Smash Brothers. It was no button masher.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, now we finish up with 96 and we move into 1997 now, I believe, Scotty, with a title that I'm going to guess that you have played and loved. I believe I've played it once, but again, it's from a property that I'm not, a huge... I like it, but I'm not a huge go out and play everything that's got this title on it kind of fan. And that's going to be Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Oh, no, we're in December 96. Okay, I thought we were in 97. Tail end of 96. So I don't have a lot of experience with this one, Scotty. Again, I believe I played it once at a friend's house. Did you play this?
Oh, I played it. I got a taste for this when I played it in the good old 64 kiosks in the
you were fucking haunting these kiosks.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, because
like people are like, this kid again.
So to give you, so my console that I had, and the only one that I could actually say was mine, or mine in part, was my Sega Mega Drive.
Yep. My
brother owned a Super Nintendo, which was made very much sure that I knew it was his. and I've been playing the shit out of the only 3 games he had on that Super Nintendo. And I played my 16 games that I owned on my Mega Drive to death.
Nice. I remember playing this level. Like this level here.
And this is the very first level.
Very clear memory of playing this.
And this was, and this is what made me fall in love with this game.
Yes. Yeah. So again, 3D space. First time.
Sweet Bippy, I had this game. And it was amazing. So interesting thing about this game was this game is part of a whole multimedia story arc for Star Wars. So it's titled Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. So Shadows of the Empire was told was a single story told through multiple different medias. One was the video games, which was on PC, PlayStation, and Nintendo 64. Also, like Killer Instinct Gold, it had full motion videos, but but that was only for the PlayStation and PC versions. The 64 got still shots of some of those scenes from the full motion video instead.
Okay.
So it was so part of the story is told through this game, where you follow. If you look at the artwork, the character on the far left, Dash Render, he was a like a mercenary. He's kind of like, he's basically a clone of Han Solo.
Yeah.
But with a way cooler ship. Oh, that's going to spark some issues on the internet. Yes, his Outrider ship is my favorite ship in the entire Star Wars franchise, so I'm a bit biased there. But yeah, so this game followed him. It was also had a tie-in with a comic book, a limited series comic book, which I would think went for 4 or 6 issues. I think it was 4. And it also had a novel.
Okay.
An actual novel, which I didn't know you'd have this on the thing, because I would have actually brought my novel out, because I do have
you still got
a copy of the novel. I do have a copy of the novel. And it's set between the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, because when you just watch Return of the Jedi after watching Empire, there's some big changes that just never got really addressed between the two films, and this Shadows of the Empire was aimed to fill that gap.
Okay.
So which is why the very opening level is the Battle of Hoth, which is at the start of Empire, and it goes through to what just precedes Return of the Jedi. And it was a game with lots of mixes of different sort of types of levels. So the opening level, you're flying in a snow speeder in this sort of 3D environment, and most of the game is played in a third-person action adventure type game where you're playing Dash himself, and you're running around with Han Solo's blaster, because he's a Han Solo clone. And then other levels had you controlling his ship, the Outrider, but really you're actually just controlling the guns on the ship. You're not flying the ship. The other levels, one of the end levels did allow you to control the ship fully, but there was also a level in the middle of the game where you're just controlling the guns, and you're in an asteroid field, and you're trying to blow up the asteroids.
Oh yeah, maybe I played more of this game than I thought I did. I remember this, like the marketing for this game was really big, because it was Star Wars had come to the Nintendo 64 for the first time, right? I remember going into rental stores and like Target and game stores, and they had like fucking posters of this everywhere. This was like, you couldn't like fucking look anywhere in one of those stores without seeing Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. They had like, I remember seeing ads on the TV. I remember seeing like photos in, like, they was all over the game magazines. Like it just seemed like when this came out, it was absolutely everywhere. And I guess also coming out in December, like around Christmas time, it got this huge.
Oh yeah, you betcha.
Star Wars that new console Christmas time. It just felt like there was this massive push for this game everywhere you looked. Oh, that's cool, Scotty. See, this is why we have you on. It's not just for your sensual good looks. It's for that wealth of retro knowledge in that big sexy brain of yours. All right, so we go on now to Scott's most hated, publicly declared most hated Mario Kart game ever made. Mario Kart.
You got me there. Yeah, it's true. I was not a fan.
Oh, this was like I'm taking it back now, because this was like, so all the nostalgic love that I have for Wave Race, right? It was even more for this game. Like this is one of the 2 games that we had when Dad brought that console home and we unboxed it, right? And I never really played a Mario Kart before this. So I never played the original SNES Mario Kart. I think I saw my cousins play it at one point at a family barbecue or something at some point. Never really played it myself. So this was my first Mario Kart experience, and just absolutely adored it. And I still adore it to this day. Like that menu screen, I can hear it when I see it, right? I can hear the music that plays there, and welcome to Mario Kart. It's just like burned into my brain, that screen. Oh Christ, I love this game so much. Sam had it recently as one of his best couch multiplayer games ever made. I wholeheartedly agree. It was so good. Seeing like this kind of experience again in 3D for the very first time was just amazing. And this is where this is why you had 4 controller ports on this fucking console, right? It was for Mario Kart 64. Nothing up until this point, really. There's a few, I guess Wave Race was 4-player as well, so I credit there. But this is where this is why we need 4 controllers, right? Like this is what warranted those extra purchases, because we played this for years. Like what game can you say that about now, really, that's not like an MMO or some online multiplayer? Like what game can you say, like a local multiplayer game, that you can say you played for years? We played this for years and loved it to bits. My mum was an absolute Mario Kart beast. Wario right there was her character of choice, and she was a demon.
I do remember going to a friend's place and being asked to bring a controller.
Yes, that was it. Bring your controllers. Slumber parties, Mario Kart, bring your controllers. That was it. Oh, gosh.
Which I think was my first taste of Mario Kart 64. I never got to play it on the kiosks back in the day. So
the battle mode.
I think it was a sleepover at a friend's place.
Yep, this is a sleepover staple. Battle mode was excellent. The tracks were excellent. The drifting mechanics were absolutely awesome. The shortcuts through the tracks that you could sort of clue onto as you got more and more familiar with it, but not because you'd read about some of them in like N64 Gamer and magazines like that, right? But some of them you just start trying shit because you'd see
an opening.
Yeah, you'd race that course so many times.
Well, you'd enter the level and you wouldn't bother with the race. You just slowly drive around the mountain,
just poking around. Just like there must be a way through here. That Sam brought it up
for a reason.
Sam brought it up that Wario Stadium jump. When you jump over that Wario Stadium, pulling a drift, and you can just drift hop straight over the top of the barrier and land and cut
clearing what is it, like a full third of the level or something?
Oh, it was like most of the course. Just shit like that. It was just the best. It was the best. It was the king. It was so good. It was one of the titles that was constantly in play from the day we got the console to the day we lost it. This got played throughout its entire life. And again, another super, super special game for me, even though Scott thinks it's absolute dog shit trash. And he's wrong. He's just wrong. That's all right, Scotty, because I think you'll be a little bit more fond of the next one.
Okay. Hit me.
Here he is.
Oh.
Turok, the original Turok Dinosaur Hunter. March 97 we're in now.
Yep.
I played this. This was a rental for me. I do remember renting this out because look at the fucking cover. Why would you not rent that? How could you see that on a rental shelf and not want a piece of that? Come on, are you kidding me? This is a kid who adores dinosaurs, head over heels in love with Jurassic Park, and you put that on a shelf in front of me? I'm gonna rent that bastard.
Here's a guy going toe to toe with
a fucking raptor, man. Come on. But I remember not being overly fond of the actual game. I remember that cover image being so fucking cool, and then the game didn't really win me over.
Fucking not.
Yeah, what did you think of it, Scotty?
I never got to play it.
Oh, really?
I never got to play it. So I
look at
yourself.
Look at this. Robots, fucking dinosaurs,
aliens,
bug alien things. Are you kidding me right now?
I never got to play it because I saw and for reasons as you stated, this freaking cover art everywhere.
Oh, what is even happening? Look at it.
64 gamer. I saw this cover art everywhere and loved the cover art. But when it came to when I actually had my 64, as I said, I got it in Christmas '97. For some reason, I just couldn't find copies of this game on the shelves.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I never saw it on any shelves.
Okay.
I actually never, because I lived way out in the country.
You lived in the middle of
So,
butt nowhere. Yeah.
so a lot of my, so I didn't get to at all to ever hire games from a store,
like a Blockbuster.
during my time. When I was a kid, I remember actually my brother hiring out games from a store called Dragon's Lair.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And
Holy
and
shit.
I remember going in there, and it was just wall to wall Super Nintendo, NES, and Mega Drive games at the time, and I was in heaven.
Yep.
And occasionally in the front shelf they'd have like X rental copies for sale, and I used to get all excited for them. But when it came time to when I had my 64, yeah, I could never find this game on any shelves in any stores.
Damn. So Turok 2
so
was your
I-
first foray.
Yeah,
into
it was
Turok.
my first foray into
Wow,
the
there you
Turok
go. Well,
series.
look, this one was like this
Rough.
was my first encounter with 3D platforming.
Yep.
And it was not good 3D platforming.
Oh, geez.
And it put me off anything to do with 3D platforming for a long fucking time. And not that I played much of this game. I did not get very far into it because it was like I thought, looking at the cover, it was like, oh, I'm going to be dropped on this fucking tropical island. There's going to be dinosaurs everywhere. I'm going to have to fight my way out of here.
Just got a fucking Bowie knife.
But then there was like weird shit. Like we saw, like there was like ant people and like robots and stuff. And I was like, that's not what I'm here for. It's not what I want. So
It says Dinosaur Hunter.
I just wanted dinosaurs. Yeah, that's
not Alien Hunter.
So it let me down a little bit in that respect. But
Yep.
I think like a bit of a cult classic, old Turok. All right, now we move from March 97 into one of the, we've had a couple of landmark games. We've had Super Mario 64, obviously a landmark game. Mario Kart 64, a landmark game for the console. I'd call this next one a landmark game for the console as well. And that is Star Fox 64, or as we got, is it called here in Australia and Europe? Was it just here? Was it just Australia? We are the only ones who got Lilac Wars, or was it other countries?
It's just Australia.
Because literally, we are the only ones who got Lilac Wars.
Yeah.
And I actually have a copy of Lilac Wars. There it is. That's what the Lilac Wars cover looks like. This is a reproduction box, but my actual legit cartridge inside there. Man, did I put some hours into this one. How about yourself, Scott? Were you a big Lilac Wars fan?
So, no, I wasn't actually, unfortunately. This looked like it was right up my alley. I remember playing it on the kiosks. I remember, having to save Flippy or Slappy or whatever, the frog.
Oh, yeah. Yep, whatever the frog's
Slippy,
name was.
I think it is.
Slippy, yeah. The toad.
Yeah, and I remember borrowing it from a friend when I was in high school. And but I didn't get very far in it. I had a hard time adjusting to its limitations, or rather, I should say, railing, on account of the fact that I played a shitload of Star Wars Rogue Squadron.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right.
You wanted.
So I had free range in a 3D environment that game.
Yeah.
And so when I got the chance to borrow a copy of Lilac Wars from a friend, I was super excited for it. I love the idea. I love the wacky animals and alike. And I had played a bit of Star Wing on the Super Nintendo when I was visiting a cousin when I was a kid. But I hated the rails.
Yeah, okay.
I couldn't stand it. And,
it was like a pseudo rail shooter. Yeah. I fucking love this game. I adored this game. Sam saying it was Lilac Wars in the EU, so there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, God. And this was it the Rumble Pack came out with this game. It was boxed in with this game. Is that the first appearance of the Rumble Pack, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was Lilac Wars, Star Fox 64.
Certainly early.
And that gave you that ship feedback through the controller, which again, mind-blowing at the time. Like, holy shit. Well, the ship's being hit, like the ship's boosting, and I can feel it boosting. That's incredible. Brrr, like if you're rattling away in the fucking plastic housing. This was one where I loved the campaign just as much as the multiplayer. Yeah, probably even more so, possibly.
Yep.
It had the branching campaign, which I hadn't encountered before, which is where you beat a
Yep.
level and then you could go this way or that way,
This
depending
way or that
on
way.
how you
And
did in that level or something that happened at that
and
level.
that's carried over from Star Fox or Star Wing.
Right?
That
Yes.
two
Yep.
also had that
This was
feature.
my first encounter with something like that, so I thought
Mm.
that was pretty crazy and cool, and gave it some replayability. Like, oh, I
Yeah,
wonder what we have
yeah.
to do to go this other direction, Um, and yeah, the multiplayer was funny. Like, it was fun, it was good, but it tended to devolve into a who fucked up their U-turn. What do they call, like, the
The barrel roll,
no,
not the
not the
barrel
barrel where you're
roll.
following and you go woo, and now I'm behind you, and so
Yeah,
you'd
yeah.
be flying along shooting at them, and you just get into this pattern
This,
of
yeah, yeah,
this
yeah,
until
yeah.
one of you messed up, and then that's the one that died, and that's sort of what multiplayer has devolved into a lot of the time. But like the barrel roll, like deflected the
Yeah.
laser shots in multiplayer. Yeah, it was just a fun game all around. Fun campaign, fun multiplayer, a lot of late nights
Yeah.
on sleepovers playing Lilac Wars.
It's
So
one I missed and one I do want to visit. I hope to visit one day. I do want to get my own copy on my
oh yeah,
64,
yep,
and then I'll get to
to play it.
properly
Is this
play and appreciate.
is this on Switch Online? I wonder
I
if it
imagine so.
is.
I think it's called Star Fox 64 on
Yeah,
there
if
though.
this is on Switch Online, yeah, definitely. If you haven't tried it, it'd be worth a try on there for sure. All right, moving on. What do we got coming up? I didn't even show. Did I even show a little bit of Star Fox? We got too carried away talking. There you go. There's the the slappy face. The slappy face
Yep.
animations. Here we go. Watch this. They're just gyrating
Yeah,
when they
look at
spoke.
it. And that's right, ladies and gentlemen. He is on speed. He's just got Kokono as Major League.
This had like full voice dialogue too.
Yeah.
Which is
it
another
did.
thing that was sort of like relatively unheard of for me, at least. Like having full voiceovers. Slippy Toad.
Slippy. There he is.
Slippy,
Toad.
Peppy, Falco, and Fox.
Come on. Yep.
Run, you bastards. Falco Lombardi. How
Yep.
come he got like a fancy name and
Fox.
everyone else is just like Slippy Toad? And
Well, he thinks he's hot shit, Falco.
he does think
and
he's
he does in. So I've recently played as of last year played Star Fox Adventures, and Falco's sort of left the team,
Oh, right, okay.
but still
Too good.
helps out.
Too
He
good
still
for him.
pops up
Yep.
and helps out. And that's actually one of the sort of cool things about the series. Well, cool or not so cool. It's your choice, because between titles, major shit happens.
Yeah, right.
Like members
Like
come and
suddenly
go.
Falco's not a part of the team anymore.
Yeah, Falco's not part of the team. Peppy gets promoted.
Right, okay.
Peppy becomes like just like the like commander leader of the team, but he doesn't fly anymore.
And damn it, Scott's it's in these games for the narrative. For fuck's sake,
yeah.
you can't just do things like that. Put a between game novel in there or something that you can read to catch up on what's happening.
Yeah, all the really major changes happen between games. so yeah, it's an interesting series.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, go on. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was going to say I'd love to. One of the games I would love to try, but it's probably going to make its own video. Is Star Fox Zero.
Oh,
which is a sort of a remake of Lilac Wars.
Yes.
But not a successful
No,
one.
no, not quite at all.
But I'm excited to give that one a go one day.
When you come up and visit, we'll give this one a bash. We might even get a little bit of footage of you playing it for the first time. That'd be funny.
You'd have to, because I imagine I'm just going to rage at the difficulty of that sucker.
All right, here's a classic, Scott. Doom 64, August
Yeah.
1997. I didn't have a lot of experience with Doom 64. I did have a lot of experience with Doom and Doom 2 on the PC, because my dad fucking loved those games. But I didn't really... I don't know... Well, I think I did... We must have got this at some point to try out, because Dad was such a Doom fan. But I wasn't a big Doom fan, so I just didn't... Like, back now, at this particular era, August 1997, right?
Yep.
That aged Jamie, little preteen Jamie, was not a first-person shooter fan at all, right? And I'm still not a big first-person shooter guy, but I can appreciate a good one these days, right? But back then, if it was a first-person shooter, it was like, not interested. So straight away, Doom 64 had very little appeal to me at the time. Did you play this one?
Oh, I had this one.
Aha.
So I was a big Doom fan.
Yes,
I
know you're a big
played
Doom
Ultimate
fan.
Doom and Doom 2.
Yes.
So mostly Ultimate Doom. I actually don't. I think I got this game before I even got to really play Doom 2, if I recall correctly. But so I was sort of expecting that it was just like a port of Doom, just on the 64. Much to my sort of, I guess, dismay, it's its own game.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the levels are different. And not just that, but everything is different with it. So it's still got that 2.5D gameplay. It's got much smoother graphics than Doom.
It's weird.
It's got a bit of
It's got that like the character, like the enemy models are 2D sprites, that's just sort of like they always face you. They're like they freaky
and that's the 2.5D.
But you're in a sort of pseudo 3D level. Yeah, it was weird. It's interesting that they kept that.
Yep, they kept that aesthetic for Doom until they changed it in Doom 3, which is my favorite Doom of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And this game they totally redesigned the look of all the weapons. They even added new weapons.
Mm-hmm.
They even gave the chainsaw a second blade, which you saw in the little video early on there. They also added some new enemies and even changed the look of them. So normally, well, not how I played Doom, but most people who played the original Doom and Doom 2 did it fast paced.
Right. Yes.
Like where you run around really fast and
you're running and gun
things as you're going. And I never actually played like that. I always took my time in a Doom game. And Doom
when it comes
64,
to demon slaying, Scott likes to take his time.
I like to take my time. Let's savor all the little tiny emotions when you're shoving your double-bladed chainsaw into something's guts. And but Doom 64 was the first atmospheric Doom. I remember playing this game at 1 a.m. at night and just nothing but the music playing, the music was actually really quite low,
mm-hmm.
and you could just hear a lot of demon noises.
Yeah.
It was very atmospheric, especially compared to 1 and 2, where it's just run and gun. You could still run and gun in Doom 64, but it was a lot more atmospheric. It was darker. It was gloomier. Things were way more poorly lit.
Yes.
It was certainly different. I have a lot of fond memories of it going right through the game. I even remember finding cheat codes to unlock 2 bonus levels that are part of because the game actually features I think it's something like 32 levels.
Okay, yeah,
or
so
something
hefty.
along those lines. And there's a couple, Oh, yeah, you'll be playing it for a while. And there's a couple that are actually just secret levels, which you needed a code to get, or specifically know what to do. I remember in the very first level that you actually get to play, I think there's these barrels that there's exploding barrels, and you had to blow up every single one of them to open a portal at the start of the level to take you to one of these bonus levels, I think, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
But there's a certain little knack to how you exploded the barrels, because if you screwed it up, you had to basically restart and try again.
That footage we just saw was from the remaster. Have you tried the remaster at all?
No, I haven't tried the remaster at all.
We'll have to put it on your list, Scotty.
Yes, it will be on my list.
All right, now we're going into a quirky game that was sort of like, it's based on a very popular property from Nintendo that this just could have came and went. Like it came first appearance on the 64 and then vanished, and we never saw it again, to my understanding. And that's Tetrasphere. Have you ever encountered Tetrasphere, Scott?
No. I do recall the cover. I don't even recall the name, but I do remember the cover.
So this was like, I'm trying to remember, because I don't I don't know that I played this. I think you're trying to match blocks, but you're trying to like work your way into the center of a sphere. But this was obviously a huge showcase for the 3D space, right?
Yeah.
You know, like if you're watching the footage here, this is like back then fairly mind-blowing stuff, being able to turn and tilt this three-dimensional sphere around as you match up the different shapes. I'm not a Tetris fan. So this one I didn't ever look into, and I kind of regret not looking into it because it is such a unique game, and we never saw it again. And it had a fairly popular sort of cult following too, and then it vanished, and we never saw the Tetrasphere property ever again.
Yeah.
Which I think, we didn't see it again for a reason, Sam's saying. Not a fan, obviously, Sammy. It was a unique, interesting idea, and I wonder whether, had they had more experience with, working in 3D, if they brought this back on, say, the GameCube, polished up the idea, how it would have done, or interestingly, like even something like the Switch on the touchscreen would be interesting. But yeah, just a little one of those little blips in the Nintendo's library that was like, it was there and then it was gone, But you just sort of scratch your head and go, that's right, Tetrasphere existed, didn't it? I forgot all about that. It's just interesting.
Just from the look of it, it looks like it's going to give you a hell of a lot of frustration with the joystick and trying to get that precision.
That's it. Having never played it, I would be fascinated to see how it actually controlled, But anyway, I just thought an interesting one that's worth mentioning since it did have a bit of a following, old Tetrasphere. Now, the game, Scott. The game. We're in August 97. We're moving on. We're still in 1997. The game that converted little Jamie onto the first-person shooter genre. The big boy. Old stretchy face cover himself. GoldenEye 007. The best game, Dom says. Look, I think you're right, Dom. I think you're absolutely right. Probably not the best game on the 64, but certainly one of the best games in the 64's library. One that I absolutely love. I hold it very near and dear. I think everybody who owned a 64 holds this game near and dear to their hearts. Mm-hmm. This was the king of slumber party multiplayer. This had a fantastic fucking campaign, and that's interesting too, right? Here's what I find really fascinating, and I don't think this is untrue for a lot of people, especially our age, right? So we would have been sort of like 11, 12, 13, around that sort of age when we played GoldenEye 007 on the 64. Yep. Most of us would have had no fucking idea that it was a movie or ever seen the movie. Had you seen the movie before the game?
No, I didn't even know that. I had heard of James Bond.
Yep.
There was, I had heard of James Bond, but had no idea that this was a film.
I find that really interesting about this game in particular, right? Because it's lauded as one of the greatest video games ever made. It's lauded as one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made, right? Especially on a console.
Yep.
But most people our age would not have been familiar with the property, would not have been familiar with the film that it's based on. And I imagine that's true for a lot of people that played this. And yet, I feel like this game kind of transcended that. Do you know what I mean? Like, despite the fact that we weren't familiar with the movie, and I think a lot of people were in the same boat, that like fucking Sam's going bonkers saying how would we not familiar with the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies? I knew they existed, Sammy. We just hadn't seen GoldenEye in particular before I played GoldenEye the game. I actually, funny story, I read the book before I saw the movie. I played the game, then read the book, got it out from the library and read it, and then watched the movie after that. I did it in that order.
The book?
The
really?
book.
I didn't know Ian Fleming wrote a GoldenEye book.
Yeah, he absolutely 100% did. Well, if it wasn't Ian Fleming, it was one of his kids or something, but I'm pretty sure it was Ian Fleming.
I didn't think he actually, because I tried to look up look for a book of it because I assume
Oh, is
all
that right?
James
Yeah,
Bond
no, you
films
got to read
were
the book's
based on
actually
books.
the book's pretty raunchy,
But,
actually. I remember reading it, going, "Oh, all right, we're off to the races here."
But yeah, I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I thought it was one of the ones that was not a book at all.
I read a GoldenEye
But,
book. I don't know if it was like
okay.
originally a book or the book came post movie or what. Dom's actually saying, was he sure it was a novelization of the movie? I don't remember. But I remember reading a book before I saw the film. Anyway, point being, this game transcends the film, right?
Yeah.
When you say GoldenEye to most people our age, the game is what they think of, not the movie, and certainly not the fucking book, right? They think of the game. Like that's, I think that's really interesting that so many people have loved this game, completely disconnected from its property, you know.
Damn good movie, but
it is a fucking great movie as well. Yes.
The game totally.
What can we say about GoldenEye that hasn't already been said? You know, like it was the great. It was one of the greatest in the catalog on the 64 and one of the greatest of all time. It was absolutely amazing. It had those, like, going back and playing it now, which I've done on the channel. It holds up surprisingly well. The control scheme does not, but the game itself holds up surprisingly well. Those big open environments, these big open levels that you can kind of tackle in whatever way you want to tackle them, was pretty revolutionary at the time. I you know, but it even now it just still feels, I don't know, like a modern design. I don't know how else to describe it. The look of the game has not aged well. Certainly the enemies
like fists.
The boxy fists and like the photograph pasted faces that are like really low res and so just look really freaky. It
looks so realistic at the same time back in the day.
And then the multiplayer, like the campaign was great, but then the multiplayer was where it was at. You couldn't get another experience that really held up to it, I don't think. I think Doom 64 it just didn't give you the same experience that GoldenEye did. The control scheme, again, back on the Nintendo 64 controller, the controls were like just really intuitive. I know that sounds weird to say now when you try and go back and use them and they feel like you're trying to steer a ship with the controls inverted, like it's just crazy. But back then it was like you just got it. I don't know what it was, like the strafing on the C buttons, combined with the like as a sort of pseudo second stick, combined with the analog stick, the weapon array, the multiplayer levels. I mean, I could go on and on and on. GoldenEye is the best, you know. It's the best. Anything you want to add to that, Scotty?
No, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I used to have fun trying to using the target reticle to sort of shoot the hats off of people.
Yes.
Or like kneecapping or shooting guns in their hands. Yeah. And it was one of the things I did actually love that I played the game. The reason why I played the game first.
This is clearly the trailer for the remaster.
Yep. Although actually, it's
look
funny
at that. That was the shit right there.
Funny. It's funny you mention that. I remember because I played the game first, and I played the game a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When I watched the movie,
how surreal was watching the movie after you played the game?
Crazy. It was crazy.
That's the facility.
And you knew the layout of the film set
because you played
the game so damn much.
Yeah, I remember that being absolutely surreal, watching the film and recognizing the locations and, like you said, the layout of them. And you're like, don't go that way. What are you doing? You're supposed to go this way.
and how much they cut out of the dam.
Yes.
like when you play the game, the dam is like this big sprawling level with the actual dam itself, bungee jump at the end.
And then the film's just the
bungee
jump.
Movie, it just starts straight to bungee jump.
Yep.
And yet they pulled a whole level out of that felt like it fit.
The ability to change the rules of the game as well, Dom's saying, which is absolutely spot on in multiplayer, like to customize how you want, like what weapon loadouts you want, you know, all that sort of thing had never really been done before. Yeah, GoldenEye, you know.
Even putting paintballs in your guns.
Oh, look, that's how we used to get away with. I don't know if I should tell this story. We used to play this at sleepovers at someone's house whose parents very strongly objected to violent video games, and so we turned paintball mode on to convince them that we were just playing paintball mode, even though blood still runs down the screen, and we were like, "It's just red paint. It's just red paint." Anyway.
Watch when I get this guy, it'll be blue. And then you just pretend not to hear, I haven't got him yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
All right, well, let's move on from GoldenEye and have a look at another cult classic, Diddy Kong Racing. I find Diddy Kong Racing, so I did not, I didn't mind Diddy Kong Racing. I liked Mario Kart 64 a hell of a lot better. But what I find interesting about Diddy Kong Racing was that Nintendo released a competitor to their own franchise on the same system. I thought that was always like a weird move, you know, like a strange choice. I still don't quite understand the why of it. But Diddy Kong Racing, another Mario, like probably the first most well-known Mario Kart clone, introduced different vehicles into the equation. A lot of different. There was a bit of a narrative, if I remember correctly. Really colourful, interesting tracks. It had a lot going for it, Diddy Kong, but I don't know. I was a Mario Kart boy, and nothing was changing that. Did you ever play this one, Scott?
I did play it a little. I did play. I think it's funny how you mentioned how Nintendo sort of released their own competitor to Mario Kart. I think that's genius because regardless of which one you go for, Nintendo
you still
gets
buy
your
your
money
game for the console. That's
true. So I actually, the most I've ever played this game was 2 years ago.
Oh, no shit.
So because my fiance Sylvia, she actually loved Diddy Kong Racing back in the day.
Okay.
That was her game more so than Mario Kart 64.
Okay.
And as a present for her, I got a copy of it. So we sat down and played it of an evening. Boy, was it a rough learning environment for me.
As an age?
It was just because I just remember, like, I didn't want to go in the go-karts, the little cars, because that's what Mario Kart was for. Right, yeah. I want to go in the little hovercraft and the plane, particularly the plane.
Well, that was the appeal, wasn't it? Like, planes and boats. Planes and boats were the appeal here. Is that like, oh my god, it's Mario Kart, but with planes and boats. Yeah. It's crazy.
And it was really interesting. But if put a gun to my head, I prefer Mario Kart 64.
And you don't like Mario Kart 64, so that's saying something.
And I don't like Mario Kart 64.
That's saying
because
something.
I've beaten Mario Kart 64. I can play Mario Kart 64. I don't know how much of this game you know, Jimmy, but
not a lot.
One of the first I guess you call it bosses.
Yes.
In this is a race with a fucking Triceratops up a fucking mountain.
Yes.
And as you're trying to race this Triceratops going up this mountain, coconuts are falling on you as well as pieces of like trees and I think rock and other stuff. This Triceratops, you don't have to race not once, but I think 3 separate times. And each time he's a effing prick. And he like I hate Mario Kart 64. My biggest gripe with Mario Kart 64, the biggest gripe I have, the only real gripe I have is I hate the rubber banding of the CPU characters.
In 64. I agree.
It is horrible. You get a really awesome, nice boost with some mushrooms and other stuff, and you're like, I'm fucking way ahead of these assholes.
No, you're not.
There's no way they're catching me now. And then Toad just goes, hey, how's it going? He doesn't earn his place there. He just does it because he's fucking programmed. I hated it. This Triceratops is worse. This fucker stays in front. And like you have to really know the fucking ins and outs of this freaking level and play flawlessly to beat this fucking Triceratops on its third difficulty. And that's where we got stuck.
Uh-huh.
And of course, you know me, I'm having a fucking raging time with this effing Triceratops, and he's a fucking asshole. So yeah, I haven't gotten past that. Whereas Mario Kart 64, as much as I hate the rubber banding, and I do hate the rubber banding, I could still beat the game.
Scott,
I could still beat the game, but
Sam
I
in the
couldn't
chat
beat
says that
this.
you must just hate games with whimsy.
I don't hate games with whimsy. That's not fucking whimsy.
Let me tell you about whimsy.
Getting a fucking, if by that measure, getting a fucking root canal is whimsy.
Yeah, I think for me, Diddy Kong it suffered because of Mario Kart. Like it was always for me going to be compared to this game that I like at this point. Oh, actually no, because I didn't play Diddy Kong in November '97. I played it quite a bit after, but yeah, it was always going to be compared unfavorably to Mario Kart. Like Mario Kart already had my heart, and it was always going to be played and going, oh, this just isn't as good as Mario. You know what I mean? Like it never had a fair chance with me. At that age, it was never going to get a fair chance with me, and that's maybe I should revisit it.
Nintendo was banking on, okay, it's been a while now. It's been a year, a bit more. So they definitely had enough of Mario Kart.
They're sick of the rubber band.
They're sick of something. They're looking for something new. Our customers, and Jimmy's like, "Fuck no."
Yeah, pretty much. That's what basically. Yeah, like fuck. I played it. And I was like, nah,
Mario Kart to go.
This looks and feels different. I don't like change. Nah. But maybe I should go back and try it because by all accounts, it was a pretty good game.
Yeah, tell me how you go with that friggin' Triceratops.
Sam says you're racing a Triceratops and you're worried about mechanics. So it's the Turok thing. You're racing a Triceratops. What are you complaining about?
Fucking coconuts. Trees falling.
Now, here's another interesting thing, right? Is that I played Diddy Kong at some point and didn't like it. I bounced off it because I didn't like it compared to Mario Kart, right? Mm-hmm. This next game is another Mario Kart clone, but this one I really, really love. And I wonder what it is about this one that made me love it. And probably nobody's played this fucking game. Nobody cares about this game, right? But I played it. I loved it. Our friend Gary, I think, owned it. And so we used to play it at his house all the time. And it was just another great multiplayer title. And that's Snowboard Kids. Did you ever play Snowboard Kids? It's probably just before you answer. It does have a lot of whimsy in it, so I don't know if you'd get on with it all that well.
No, I never played Snowboard Kids.
Snowboard Kids was fucking fantastic.
Yeah, for me, I was a big 1080 snowboarding fan because that was the first one I saw. I know that if I had saw this first, I would have liked this and played this more, but I never seen this until long after 64 had its day, like, and GameCube was in the picture.
1080 snowboarding crossed with Mario Kart. And I think that's probably why I loved it, because I actually did not like 1080. In fact, I played 1080 on the channel here recently, again, to see, like, oh, did I like it or not like it? And I remembered, no, actually, I did not like this game. But I think because 1080 was very like po-faced and serious and like, hey, it's a serious snowboarding game and we're serious about our serious snowboarding. Seriously.
Hey, it has its whimsy. You can play as a dude with a panda head.
There's no whimsy in that game.
You can play as a dude with a panda head. There's a guy made of glass.
This was a game that didn't take itself very seriously. It was very Mario Kart to the core. All the same mechanics, the items, picking up random items. But this was like you were racing from the top of a slope down to the bottom, and then there'd be only one entry into the chairlift. And you'd all if it was a close race, it was like a pile up, like, because there's no stopping. It's just like bang, 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 bang. You'd all crash into each other trying to be the first ones up this fucking chairlift, which would take you back up to the top, and you do the second lap down the same course again, right? And you do 3 laps, and that was it, or something along those lines. And, throwing items at each other all the way down. It was great. This was a banger. This was an absolute banger, and I loved it. Sam apparently is saying that he really liked it as well. I don't ever hear anyone talk about this. I want to play this on the channel again soon just to see if it's as good as I remember. But I loved it.
Well, there's a little bit of a reason why I think no one talks about it nowadays. Is I do know, and despite having never played it, Snowboard Kids was big. People did love it.
Yeah, cool.
It
Well, it got a
was,
sequel.
it was a
People
very,
must
it
have
was a
played
very
it.
popular game. It was a very popular game.
Yeah.
That sequel, though, Snowboard Kids 2, was apparently dog shit.
Right. I never played the
It was
sequel.
and because it was huge fans of the first one did not like the second one.
Okay.
And so Snowboard Kids 2 did not sell very well.
Okay.
And on the secondary market nowadays, Snowboard Kids 2 actually fetches a really high price into the thousands.
Wow.
Because no one wanted it back in the day.
Huh. There you
So
go.
it's a rare find nowadays. So if you can find you can find a loose copy of it for a few hundred easy on eBay, but to find a pristine boxed copy of it, you're looking at a couple of G's easy.
Wow, there you go. No, I never touched the sequel. Never
it's,
played the sequel.
yeah.
We only
Apparently,
had the first one.
it's absolutely horrendously bad that no one bought it, and now it's a super rare collectible.
Now it's a super collector's item.
Catalog.
Well, there you go. If I ever see one lying around in a fucking Vinny's bin somewhere, I'll snatch it up.
Oh yeah, you snatch that sucker up and
before you told me that, I wouldn't have looked sideways at
it. There's your retirement fund right there.
All right, moving on now to a port of an arcade game that they brought over to the 64, and this for me was a rental king. There were a couple of games that were like, I don't want to buy this, like I don't want to own it, or I don't want to play it all the time, but if we're having a slumber party or a sleepover or a birthday party, we are renting this game. Right? There was a few titles that were like rental kings in my group. This was one of them. Did you play Rampage, Scotty?
No, my only experience playing Rampage is the arcade game.
Ah, right. Okay.
So I have seen this.
Yes.
I have seen the Rampage World Tour.
Yep.
But yeah, I can't say that I've ever gotten to play it. I just remember the original Rampage.
This was fantastic. Like it was just like it got boring fairly quickly, which I think is why I didn't want to own it, right? But in the sort of like hour or 2 hours that you had 4 people pounding away on each other, smashing up buildings, eating civilians, all that sort of stuff.
While you're eating pizza.
Yep, while you're eating pizza, smashing up military vehicles.
Yep.
Like it's one of those things, like up until the point where it got boring, it was a fucking riot. It was so fun until it wasn't. And then you'd be like, all right, let's take that out and play something else, put GoldenEye in or something, right? But it was just like for that little bit of time, it was just glorious. I just have a very fond memories of Rampage. We'd hire it out regularly whenever we were sleeping over on a weekend. It was like down to Blockbuster or Civic. Is Rampage in we'd ask them, or we'd go and look, and if it was like, right, we're getting Rampage, and what else do we want, you know? It was just one of those sorts of titles. So yeah, one of the rental kings for me, Rampage World Tour. Okie dokie. So this is interesting, I think, Scott, is that 1080 Snowboarding, which you come to now, came out after Snowboard Kids. I always thought it was the other way round.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, but apparently not.
See, I thought
only a month after,
back
mind
in the
you,
day that it was. I thought 1080 Snowboarding was actually closer to like nearly a launch title.
Yeah, no, it came out much later. Now this game had a ton of hype, and I said this when I did the playthrough, I don't really understand why. Like I think it was like looked at as a bit of a graphical powerhouse, I suppose, back then. But I just don't really. It was a critical darling. All the games magazines were fucking raving about it when it came out. And I remember playing it and just not really getting what all the fuss was about. Like just thinking like, is this it? Is this the game? You know, like you do time trials or trick attacks and, you know, jump and then press as many buttons as you can to do as many tricks as you can before you land. And it's like, and that's the game. It's like, okay. Is that it? I don't know. I was always just a bit bamboozled that this was so widely loved and wildly popular.
Yeah, it was just
explain it to me, Scott. Explain yourself. Why do you love this piece of shit?
Well, Jimmy. you just don't get it.
I don't. I really don't. You're right. I do not get it.
It was a solid. Well, for me, it was a solid racing game that wasn't strictly racing in a car.
Yeah, okay. But it's just you and one other person going down a fucking slope.
Down a slope, but man, that like I hadn't catch your video that of your playthrough, but how effed up were you by the time you got to the bottom of that?
Oh
slope?
Yeah, that's right. The controls I felt were pretty shit. And look, I'm no
it's a game of survival, man.
Like a little bit. Like I'm no fucking snowboard wizard or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure the fuckers can turn.
So yeah, I think that's part. So part of my what I loved
it felt
about
more
it
like
was
pinball than snowboard.
It was close to actually. It was an interesting racing game. You weren't in a car. Mm-hmm. You weren't in a go-kart, and it was a racing game, and it was closely sort of linked to the sport itself. Like, yeah, you could do races downhill, you could do slalom through the flags there, you could do the tricks and stunts. I actually wasn't the stunt stuff wasn't my big draw card. I just liked the racing.
That's interesting. I felt when I played
the racing.
I was like, this is a super fucking on a console that was spoiled for racing games. This is a really mediocre racing game. So the appeal must be the tricks, right? That's got to be what people love is the tricks, because the racing is like fucking boring. So then I went and tried the tricks, and I found that fucking boring. I was like, what? What do people love about this fucking thing? I don't get it. Anyway, maybe it's just me. Obviously, it's just me because people love this game, but I don't get it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
so you told me you didn't like fucking Diddy Kong Racing, but you like this. You're insane. I've decided right now.
I didn't have I remember trying a bit of Diddy Kong Racing back in the day. Just a little bit. I didn't play anywhere near as much as I played a couple of years ago. But 10A snowboarding was solid to me. It wasn't as it was Diddy Kong Racing is clunky by comparison.
Yeah.
I'm sure it hasn't fared terribly well under modern scrutiny.
Well, maybe that's it too. Maybe it just hasn't aged well. Dom's saying that he really liked Tony Hawk because the stunts and tricks let him explore an environment. Like you could just go around, have a poke around, which you couldn't do on 1080. You're just going down a fucking half pipe. Yeah. And it was like...
Yeah. But when you fly off the edge of a mountain and you're pardon the language, pulling a stiffy, which is a legitimate trick in 10A snowboarding, and you're just sort of falling down to your imminent demise while you're just holding this trick. It's it was awesome, and if you could actually some of the fun of it was trying to do these massive.
Oh, I remember trying to pull off a 1080.
Going off the track and then trying to stick the landing while you're still going downhill. That was so good.
I don't know what these boards are made out of, but I could not stick a landing to save my life. Like every single... You go and watch that video, man. I get I think I hide it pretty well, but I was getting genuinely frustrated.
I'll definitely have to watch because I loved going off the edge of a major cliff and tilting myself enough so that I just land flush and just go straight down.
I couldn't
without but if you couldn't get it, you're just tumble rolling and you're dead.
There was a lot of that
from full health to death, really. And there were secret characters in it too. Like I said, you could play a guy with the guy on the front cover there. There was if you did all of the stunts in the sort of tutorial with the tricks.
Yep.
You could get a version of him who had a massive panda head.
Okay.
There was another person that was made of glass or crystal, who they were fragile as one fall would kill you instantly, and it didn't have to be a big fall at that, but they were really, really, really fast.
Yep.
And then there was another character you could unlock, which I think was the last one you could get, who's a man made of solid gold, like a character made of solid gold. But he was what you gave to new players because he could take beatings.
Well, that's
he
what I
was
need.
decent with his speed, but you could chuck him down mountains, and it would take a lot to kill him.
That's what I need. The other thing too, I don't think that another thing that annoyed me about this game, right, is that the lobby music, like when you're choosing your character in the cabin and choosing your board, the music that's playing there, I could not get that out of my fucking head for like the week after I played it. And this is like, you know, when you get a song that you like stuck in your head, and it's it can be a bit annoying, but at least you like the song. So this is like a game that I did not like, and then like the fucking lobby music for the game I did not like burned into my... Oh man, I was ropeable. I was like, get out of my skull.
So but it did have its popularity, and it did come out with a sequel on GameCube called 1080 Avalanche.
I forgot
and I do have that.
Avalanche. Yeah,
I do have 1080 Avalanche.
Okay.
Love playing 1080 Avalanche, and it was one of the few GameCube titles that actually supported LAN play, where you could connect 4 GameCubes together and play multiplayer with 4 different GameCubes.
Interesting. Right, well, I would commit to trying. I mean, I'll try anything really. I mean, look at me.
And they ramped up. They ramped up the music, so they actually got a lot of licensed music.
Game, do they?
No, but they actually got a lot of licensed music in that game.
They went
similar to GTA. And you could change the music track to play on to whatever song you liked for any level. It was awesome, and given the name, it also added avalanches to the game, where you're not only trying to you're trying to out snowboard your fellow players, but there's a big fucking mountain just coming down behind you.
That actually does,
and you're trying to outrun this avalanche.
That sounds fun. I will try that. I'll try it. I'll to trying that.
And those levels, right? They were long too, and you couldn't mess up.
Yep.
You messed up, you're dead.
Yep.
But at the end of the level, you're on this high mountain. You'd charge off at the very end of the level was this peak, and off of the peak is this helicopter with its doors open, and you had to jump off this peak into the helicopter. And the funny thing is, the helicopter had both sides of the helicopter's doors open. So realistically, you'd fly through it and just go out the other side. But no, in the game, you're like making this very slow motion, like clean landing into the thing, and then it just takes off before the avalanche hit the helicopter. It was awesome. Yeah,
should have been 2160 snowboarding. Dom saying I could not pull off. I don't know any human being that can pull off a 1080. I could barely pull off a fucking 360. It was ridiculous. Anyway, let's move on. Well, we can be here all night. Right, what's up next? Oh, there we go. There's a big one. Banjo-Kazooie, one of Sam's favorites. Now, I don't have much, again, not a 3D platformer fan. Thank you very much, Turok. So I don't have a lot of experience with Banjo-Kazooie. A friend of mine owned and loved this game, so I did watch him play it a fair bit during our high school years, but I didn't really have much encounter with it. Like, I think I borrowed it off him for a few days to try it out, but most of my experience was watching him play it. Have you got any experience with this one at all, Scotty?
Do a little. So I did play a little bit of it back in the day, thanks to the kiosks, because I could find any game playing on kiosks.
You were just haunting those fucking places, man. Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. But my fiance Sylvie, she loved Banjo-Kazooie as well. So that was also a game I have picked up for her, and we did make an afternoon of playing it.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's interesting. It actually has a lot more depth to it than I thought it did. There's a lot more stuff in it. Because back in the day, I actually didn't like Banjo-Kazooie, because similar to how you didn't like Diddy Kong Racing because you were all about Mario Kart, I was all about Super Mario 64. And Banjo-Kazooie I just saw as a lame clone.
Yeah. Except in my instance, it's like it was a clone of something that I didn't particularly care about in the first place that much, so I didn't have. Although I will say that visually, it was gorgeous for its time. Right, it was a beautiful looking game, like graphically, artistically. It was a certainly powerhouse.
I certainly didn't appreciate it sort of back in the day, but after having played it a couple of years ago when I picked up a copy of it, I can't recall how far we got. but it's one we do want to continue on with. But it was, there's a lot more to it than sort of meets the eye. There's a lot of things
Like a
that
Transformer.
hidden. Yes.
Yeah, you like that one? Yeah, that one.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. But
That stunned him for a second there. Stunned him to silence.
No, but there was a lot to. There's certain things that it had a lot of revisiting areas later on when you had new stuff. And
Yes.
you could unlock newer paths and
Yep.
access things that you couldn't prior.
I also find it interesting that like this was obviously an evolution of, Super Mario 64. That's clearly the inspiration here. But from Banjo-Kazooie onwards, every kind of 3D platformer, I feel, has taken Banjo-Kazooie as the influence. Like, they haven't really gone back to the Super Mario well, I feel. That's how, at least that's how it feels to me. Both in terms of, like, looks and gameplay. I find most of them tend to have more in common with Banjo-Kazooie than they did with the OG Super Mario 64. Which, speaks for itself to the quality of the game at the time, I guess. Also, holy shit, was the Nintendo 64 Rare's console. Like, Rare was just churning out banger
Quality.
after banger after banger on this fucking system. And I think we're not even like to the end of what they put out on it. And we're only highlighting some of what they put out on it. They were on fire through this period of time, and showing like producing a range of games. You've got fucking Banjo-Kazooie so far, Diddy Kong Racing, and GoldenEye, right? Three totally different genres of game from the same studio.
And I
which
find
back then didn't really happen.
No. And certainly not with a little company called LGN, for those who know the Nest library. But I find it funny how like take GoldenEye for example. Rare, it was one of the there had been James Bond games prior to that, but Rare so much so hit the nail on the head with GoldenEye that I sort of am a bit perplexed that why the fuck the license was given to EA with every other fucking James Bond game since.
Who knows?
Like, when these guys clearly know what they're doing, they know how to churn out a quality
it'd be a licensing thing
shooter.
that EA got the James Bond license. That's why it would have, they would have bought that up and they've got the rights to it. That's why. But yes, it's a fucking travesty. I agree.
Yeah. but yeah, no, Rare was
just killing it. Absolutely.
Rare was
killing
it. I don't know what, I feel like Nintendo definitely, when they lost Rare and Rare got bought by Microsoft, I feel like Nintendo definitely lost a major collaborative.
Oh yeah, can you imagine if Rare was still partnered with Nintendo now? Like how, what could have been? You know what I mean? Like it's like Dom's made the joke like the noted Xbox Game Studios mascot Banjo-Kazooie. Which is crazy. Yeah, that's so weird. It is bizarre. It's so weird to see these properties on Microsoft stuff. But if they were still in the Nintendo house, then
we would have got a decent Perfect Dark Zero.
We got more Banjo-Kazooie, like another follow-up actual Banjo-Kazooie.
Well, we did. There was Banjo-Tooie.
There was, yes, correct, which may or may not show up in a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's kick on from old Banjo here, and we go to another big hitter for the console, I feel, and that was F-Zero X. So F-Zero being a launch title for the SNES, again, one of only like 2 launch titles or something for that console. I don't know what's going on there with the launch title libraries, but F-Zero X coming a decent way into the lifespan of the 64, but holy shit, like what a game. Did you play much of this?
Oh, I played this.
This
for
was
sure.
like,
I played Virtual Console version of this though,
which I think is what we've got footage of here is like Virtual Console or remaster. Man, this was just insanity. This game and online multiplayer. There you go. It is Virtual Console. Yeah, like this was so fun, and like the speed, and also I believe, and I'm fairly sure this game ran at 60 frames per second on the 64, which is crazy, right? You think about
Yeah,
that for a second. Getting
yeah.
that kind of frame rate out of that console at that period of
Back
time
then, yeah, we're
is
still having trouble
unheard
getting
of.
that from modern titles.
Yeah. What
On
a fun game.
PC
Just a
too.
fun racing game. Blazingly fast. It
Yeah,
spawned a lot of imitators. Even to this day, spawns a lot of imitators. And I think they all come back to F-Zero X rather than F-Zero itself, because F-Zero was a 2D track affair,
yeah,
whereas F-Zero
yeah,
had all kinds of crazy shit going on. You were racing around like the outside of a cylinder sometimes on these tracks,
yeah.
like loops, all kinds of stuff. This was this was one of my
It
favorites from the
was
64 era.
separated the men from the boys, so to speak.
But
Like with
still,
some of those tracks.
I felt like it was
Yeah,
still approachable. You know, like even though it was
yeah,
blitzingly fast, like the tracks almost kind of accommodate. Like you got that sense of speed without needing the like hyper twitchy reactions. You needed a little bit of it, of course, but not. It
yeah.
wasn't. I don't know. It was a bit deceptive in its speed. This was another great 4-player king as well. 4-player racing, especially like
Easy
with
to
that.
play, hard to master comes to mind
Yeah,
with
a
it.
little
Like,
bit, but just fun,
mm,
just straight up fun, and holy shit, a cracker of a soundtrack. Like the soundtrack for F-Zero X,
yep.
so good, so good. All right, that's October 98, Scott, which means you know what must be coming up next. We're in the tail end of 1998. What did the tail end of 1998 give us on the Nintendo 64, Scotty?
I can only wonder. I can only wonder, Jimmy.
It has been called
Hmm.
the greatest video game ever made.
Yep, I'd buy that.
You buy it?
I'd buy that. I did,
And I did, yeah.
and I did.
Ocarina of Time, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. There's not a lot we can say about Ocarina of Time that hasn't already been said 100,000
Yeah.
times already. This is a masterpiece of game design. And I think I went through a period there where, I loved, like, Ocarina of Time was my favorite game ever for a long, long time. It felt like a long, long time. And, or at least in contention for it. And at some point, I sort of like, with age, I feel like, it's sort of lost its sheen a little bit, and I started to be drawn towards some other Zelda titles over Ocarina.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I think about it, I don't know if it's just, again, that I'm getting old, and the older you get, the more poignant the story Ocarina tells becomes, I think. The more it hits home about, because the story is about time. It's about the passage of time. It's about growing up and the difference between adulthood and childhood, and the fact that, you can never really go backwards. Not really. You can pretend to for a little while and play in that world for a little while, but you can never really go back. And I think as I get older, I just find that, again, it's more and more thought-provoking. And so it's sort of come back around as like, no, I do fucking just adore this game so much, Yeah, still got my golden cartridge. It's sitting right behind me on the shelf here. Do you still have your copy, Scotty?
No, I got rid of mine. I
Oh,
do have a
no.
copy now, but it's my
Good.
second. It's
Okay.
it's actually Sylvie's.
Oh, right. Okay.
But no, I was stupid in my youth
Yeah.
and
Weren't we all?
sold my entire
Weren't we all?
64 collection.
Yep.
I think I had around 21 games on it.
What a
But yeah,
beast.
and it was one of the ones.
Can you, just looking at 1998, right? So the 64 came out in 1996, which makes the Nintendo 64 almost 30 years old. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
That is, when you just think about that for a second, that's actually a bit fucking scary. And for this game in particular to still be considered one of, if not the greatest video game ever made, all these decades later, is kind of mind-blowing, I think.
Like it's
anyway.
amazing for any game back then to still be relevant.
Yes.
But
to even be thought about, let alone still considered one of the best ever made,
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't need to dwell on Ocarina. We go into a lot more in our Legend of Zelda retrospective, which you can go and watch on the channel if you like. But yes, obviously a lot to say about old Ocarina. Good old Oot. All right. Here's one that you'll remember fondly, Scotty.
Yep.
Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Tell us about it, Scott. I didn't really play it. Expansion pack required, I see there.
Yes. You need the expansion pack. I think you could play potentially the first level. I'm not entirely sure if you didn't have the expansion pack, but I did at the time. Interestingly enough, one thing I loved about Nintendo is, yes, they did package like expansion packs with games in, as well as like the Rumble Pack came with Lilac Wars.
Yes.
But I love that they sold them separately for those of us who weren't interested in the games that came with them.
Yes.
So I remember buying my Rumble Pack and my expansion pack separately. And
right. Yep. Okay.
And yeah, I put so much time into Rogue Squadron.
Yeah.
And I still do from every now and then.
You go back to it every now and then. Would you say this is one of your favorite games from the console?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. It was fantastic. It was like a lot of Star Wars games were like you know, at the time they were like first person shooters like Dark Forces. There you had some other sort of Shadows of the Empire. But I was a bit sort of odded by the fact that you're just in a plane. You're just in a ship. Like, you know, Shadows of the Empire has you on foot and in a ship and manning guns. But this was just purely a ship. But it was so damn good. The levels were so well designed. They were like engaging. Like, you know, you had a certain objective to do, and then it evolved beyond that, you know, to the next thing that you had to do. There were lots of little like secret hidden sort of areas that you could find, and like you know, like in one of the early levels of the game, you had to, I think actually in the first level of the game, you're on Tatooine, and you're flying around trying to kill probe droids that are in the area, and then once you kill all the probe droids, Mos Eisley is being bombed by TIE bombers. And there's some TIE fighters there as well, but you want to take out the bombers to finish the level. And you got like and based on your performance, you got like a medal for beating the levels.
Yep.
And that medal was determined on so many factors. One was how long it took you to play the level, how many enemies you defeated, what your accuracy was, how many friendly lives were lost. It had a whole bunch of requirements, and I ended up making it my mission because you could get no medal at all if you were really crap. You could get bronze, silver, gold, and then there was this I can't remember what type of medal it was, but it was like blue with a sort of goldish out sort of line, and that was like the peak that you could get. And I remember getting that medal for every single level. I spent so much time playing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's levels where you can, if you kill certain things, like there's a house I think in Mos Eisley that if you blow it up, there's an upgrade for one of your other ships.
Oh, okay.
Which you can pick up, so you could get upgrades for your ships, like better shields, better lasers that do more damage.
So secrets hidden in the level, in addition to objectives and like an evolving quest line. And yeah, right, okay.
And it was fantastic, and it had you in so many ships.
Yes, I remember
so many ships. Yep. From like the X-wing on the cover, the Y-wing that's also there. You could even pilot a like I think the TIE fighters in there. You could even pilot the Millennium Falcon.
Yep. You have to. They're not going to make a game like this and not let you pilot the Millennium Falcon.
No, and I think the Falcon was actually so there was also a set of cheats that you could. So there's a cheat menu, and you could enter a word in. I think it was a 7-letter word. or up to 7 letters. And I remember trying to just enter random words into that one day. And I remember to unlock the Falcon, you had to type in Farm Boy.
Oh,
But
yeah, I remember that. Oh shit! Why would I remember that? I barely played
that
this game.
that was one I found out later. But
Okay.
and this is the only time this has ever happened. I was mucking around with that cheat code thing, and I was just putting in random words, and I actually had one work.
Okay.
And this was, I didn't look up any guide
You
for
just
anything. I'm just putting in random words just because they fit.
Yep.
And holy shit, I actually unlocked a secret hidden level. And
that's how you did it back in the day.
And the word was chicken. If you type in the word chicken. And for those who fans of the franchise know, an alternate name for the all-terrain scout transport, or ATST, is chicken walker.
Yep.
So I typed in chicken, and lo and behold, I was put in a bonus level where I'm controlling an ATST, and I think I'm shooting Ewoks or Jawas. Jawas. I'm shooting Jawas in Tatooine in this sort of fenced off area. It's just like shooting fish in a barrel. And just trying to do it in as quick as time as possible. Like you could do it in I think 30 seconds or a minute. It's not a big deal. It's just for a laugh, really. They must have just put it in there for a laugh. And I was so stoked that I actually just randomly putting in words, I unlocked that. But yeah, it was super fun. It was fantastic. And Factor 5, who's the developer, the creators behind it, unfortunately are no longer around.
Yep.
They went defunct, but they managed to squeeze out 2 equally awesome sequels to that game as well.
GameCube sequels?
On the GameCube, yep. Yes, they were on the GameCube. One I'm pretty certain was a launch title too.
Okay, there you
go. So yeah.
Star Wars Rogues Right. So a bit of a fan, you'd say, Scott, then?
Just a little bit. It's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right.
It's all right.
There's no Lilac Wars, but it's all
right. It's no Lilac Wars. No.
All right, so going from a game that Scott has poured hundreds of hours into to a game that Scott has criminally poured 0 hours into. Mario Party.
Does Mario Party All Superstars on Switch count?
No,
because it's just the trilogy wrapped in one.
It doesn't count.
It should count.
You don't have the grinding sticks. It doesn't count. Good old Mario Party. This was, again, I was talking about Rental Kings. This was another one. Rental Kings. Yep. Is Rampage in? Yes. Is Mario Party in? Yes. There's our rentals for the sleepover. Thank you very much. Off we go.
Fortunately, it's the same 2 games we've rented for
pretty
5
much,
years.
Man. That was it. That's what we did. Mario Party was so much random goodness. So much minigame fun. It was just you just had to play it. Yep. The original, you just had to play it because you hadn't really played anything like it before. Yep. I think the closest thing that I had played like it was Atmosphere, right? Remember that?
Yep.
And that didn't really, it was no Mario Party. It didn't really translate, but that was the most similar thing. But this was, it was just so fun. And especially if you had a group of like-humored friends who could really have a giggle genuinely, in a good-natured way at other people's misfortune and didn't get shit off or angry or upset about it. There might have been a few instances of that every now and then.
That was rare, wasn't it?
Yeah, but, if you had in that environment, in that very specific environment, Mario Party was so fun. It was so good. Yep. Still is. And ridiculously unfair, but fun. You just needed that
unfortunately, I missed it. I never had... So most of my Nintendo 64 days was I didn't have anyone to play with so much.
Yeah, that's like Mario Party. You needed 3 other players. You had to have 3 other players. You could play with 2, and it was just like a pale shadow of what it was like with 4.
Yeah, and so I had other I did get a chance. I did get to play multiplayer with some sleepovers with friends and that, but we had other games that were on a list, and no one actually ever had don't ever recall anyone having a Mario Party game, unfortunately. So I
Yeah,
missed
like I
out.
said, it's not one that we ever owned. It was like another
Yeah.
rental king, but we never bought it because
Yeah.
it's an experience that you would only have in that specific environment of
Yeah.
like the high energy slumber party, a lot of
Yeah.
teenagers, you know, joking around and carrying on, and that sort of like that atmosphere is what fueled Mario Party and made
Yep.
it great. If you tried to play it in any other atmosphere, I don't feel like it would have translated as well, you know.
Hmm. And I remember reading something
Oh,
interesting
well done.
about thank you
Yeah,
about
I knew you'd
Mario
get there.
Party. About Mario Party was so Mario Party caused a lot of blisters on people's palms due to
Yes.
certain mini games
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
just wreaked havoc on the controller.
Oh, yeah.
That so much so that a company actually sought out Nintendo and told them that they need to address this,
Hmm.
and Nintendo addressed it by providing gloves in future copies of Mario Party.
No, that's not a
No
real thing.
shit. That
No,
is
there
a
were
real
no
thing.
gloves in Mario Party. That's
Yep.
bollocks.
No, they will. Look it up.
No
It might not have
way.
been in Australia, but it was certainly in the US.
You know
And
those little silicon thumbstick toppers that you can
yeah,
get for your controllers these days? That would have
oh
been
yeah,
brilliant for back then.
that would have
That's
been
what we
brilliant.
needed.
They didn't think of that then.
No, that's
But
what we
I was
needed.
serious, man. Look it up. They actually
Gloves. I will
provided
go and look that
gloves
up.
with the
Chat, is
with
Scott for real or
future
what?
copies. Yep, look it up.
Leave a comment if that's for real. Oh,
Yep,
holy shit.
it
Yeah,
is.
Dom's just put a link in the chat. He's gone and checked it out.
Told you, ye of little
Nintendo
faith,
offers
Jamie.
glove to prevent joystick injuries. Wow, that's amazing.
And Mario Party was the culprit.
Fucking Mario Party. Oh, yeah, and
Questioning me on my video game knowledge. How dare you,
they're
sir?
spot on too, because like I remember getting like welts and
Yep.
you know, after a good solid Mario Party. I think they started to tailor the mini games to require less joystick grinding after this.
Because there was less joystick left.
That's yeah. I think
They
Mario
had
Party
turned
would have
to
been
powder.
yes, it would have been the responsible for a lot of that powder grind in the joystick wells on controllers back then. Good on Mario Party. All right, moving on. This is another one that I have picked to put on the list just because I remember it very fondly. It wasn't a Nintendo 64 exclusive or anything. I think it was on PlayStation as well. But Vigilante 8 was another fantastic multiplayer game in particular. I don't even remember if it had a campaign, honestly, because we pretty much exclusively played this multiplayer. It was just a what's the game series I'm trying to think of?
Vehicular combat.
Yeah, Twisted Metal.
Like Twisted Metal.
Yeah, it was a Twisted Metal ripoff, essentially. But I just remember it really, really fondly. I couldn't actually find a trailer for it, so this is a trailer for the sequel, but it's the same thing.
Oh wow! Yeah, totally.
You just drive around these huge, like they felt huge, open levels with like it was like an arena shooter, but you were in a car, right?
Yep.
Like you picked up weapons, they clack onto your car. You get special abilities that you would power up. It was just so much fun. It was just an absolute riot. Really loved this one. Don't know what happened to this franchise. I think they had the sequel, which that footage was from, and then I don't know what happened to it after that. It just disappeared after that. But I remember having a lot of local multiplayer fun on the 64. That would be, you know, some of my fondest multiplayer memories would be playing good old Vigilante 8. And a lot of levels were just cool. There was like a farm that you could like, it had like, but it was like a, you know, like there was the farmland and there was a barn and there was a house and there was like a, you know, fenced it, and you could drive around this entire open area just hunting for other people and weapons to shoot the shit out of each other. There was a snow, like on this, like a snow resort or something. It was just good stuff. Vigilante 8. Oh yes. All right, here we go. So speaking of multiplayer kings, we come to one of the greats, Super Smash Brothers, the original Super Smash Brothers. I've never liked this cover. I've always
nor did I actually.
I've always thought this cover was just fucking wanky. I don't know what it is.
It looked like a cheap fan art.
It did. It just looked like a bit of a fan art. I just have never liked it. I don't like the composition. I don't really even understand what's going on necessarily in it. Yeah, I don't know.
Where are they?
Not a great
are they
cover.
in a blue swirl?
Yeah. What is even fucking happening here? But a great fucking game. Now, question to you, Scott. Now, you said you'd never
Yeah.
played the original Smash Brothers. Is that correct?
No, I have played
you have
the
played the
original
original.
Smash
Okay.
Brothers. Yeah.
Have you seen the original commercial for the original Smash Brothers?
No, I have
Well,
not.
my friend, do you remember me giving you that treat in the Zelda retrospective
Yes,
with
yes,
the
I
A
do
Link to the
remember
Past commercial?
you treated me to some
I
disgusting homunculus of
I'm about to
a
enrich your life
trailer.
once again, my friend,
Oh,
as I've
really?
done many, many
Really?
times in this friendship. Get a load of this bad boy. So this is the commercial for Super Smash Bros. Look at this, how nice.
What the?
We're all holding hands, and then we're fucking tripping straight over. Oh, now we're killing each other.
What the?
Yes,
Wow!
him
What the
again.
hell?
Oh, there goes Pikachu.
Oh! Oh wow! Oh
I
man,
love it.
that is brilliant.
It is. It's
I love
fantastic.
that. That is brilliant.
Oh man. What'd you say, Don? I always thought that this series launched on the Super Nintendo. Because it wasn't called Smash Brothers 64. Oh, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, great game.
Wow.
Great game. One I wasn't sold on. I didn't like the box cover. I actually didn't even like the idea. Like back then, I really didn't like. There's a word for it. What's that word where you're bringing stuff
Crossover?
No, not crossover. It's called something like where you're blending like people from different periods in time or different genres or different games where you bring them all together into one space. It's called something. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, I didn't like that that genre of thing, and this was one of those. So I was turned off by almost everything about it. But then I played it, and it was like, holy shit, this is actually really good. This is fun, and really loved it. I never owned it. My friend owned it, but I was at his house so often it felt like I owned it. And we played it all the time once he got a hold of this. Great game. Again, not one that we're going to get much pushback on, I think, for promoting. What do you think about it, Scotty? Did you like it when you played it or not?
I had sort of mixed feelings about it. Like it was similar to yourself. I didn't own it. A friend owned it.
Yep.
And I did get to play it, and I did have fun with it. I loved the Pokeballs.
Yeah.
Like just tossing Pokeballs and just letting that do all the work for you.
Yep.
Was so much fun.
We were talking earlier, Dom, with Dom was saying about GoldenEye having customizable rule sets. Holy shit. Yeah. This was like if you wanted customizable rules for your multiplayer experience, this was it. You could change all kinds of stuff.
Even your character's color.
Yep. The whole what you're playing
it was
for, everything, the items, the arena, what was dropping, how frequently it would drop.
Yeah, it was fun, and I did like it, but I did struggle with the controls for it.
I loved the controls for this. I thought they were great.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I enjoyed playing it, but it wasn't one. I never felt like I had to own this.
Yeah.
I got my fill out of it from just hanging out with my friend who had it.
Yeah, I mean, I never owned it, but that's only because I played his so much. I didn't need to own it because he was the person I would play multiplayer games with. So we both didn't need to own copies of the same game. But I remember when he got Smash Brothers, our excursions to the rental store for sleepovers decreased dramatically. You know, because we had Smash Brothers now. We didn't need Rampage. I don't even know if we got Rampage again after this came out, to be honest.
After that.
This sort of filled that whole very nice.
Rampage just sat on the shelf collecting dust.
Yeah, poor old Rampage.
To be forgotten in the ether.
Still love it. In short bursts. All right, next one on the list, Scott. We've got the Nintendo 64, the console that has arguably the greatest game ever made, right? In Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
Also, has arguably the worst game ever made. Put this on the list for you, buddy. Now, I was fascinated, like, right away. It doesn't even have the fucking title of the game on the box.
Nope. Because the symbol says it all, man.
And I thought, because this is just slang, colloquially called Superman 64, right?
Yeah.
But I was fascinated to find out its actual real name is Superman, the new Superman Adventures.
Yeah.
Who thought that was a great title?
Because it's based on the animated series.
But why not just call it the new Superman? Why do we need Superman twice? We don't. The answer is we don't. We don't need Superman twice. And certainly, like when you pick this box up off the fucking shelf, if you're telling somebody this is a game that you want for your birthday or something, and you're like, listen, I'd like Superman, the New Adventures of Superman, or whatever it's called. The fucking title's not even on the box. How are they gonna just grab like some random Superman game? There's just like right off the bat, I just feel like there's so many red flags. And then like, I've never played this. You've played this before, is that right, Scott?
I had it.
You owned it. Is that right? No shit.
And I owned it. Yeah, I had a secondhand copy of it. Like a lot of my games, I had secondhand copies. So I had secondhand copies of it.
It had multiplayer.
And I tell you what, it is. Pardon?
It had multiplayer. I didn't know that.
I didn't even know that, to be honest, because it's. I only recall it being a single player game, but
yeah, it's got full controls on the box there. I see it.
Oh, well, but yeah, it's every bit as bad as they say when you play the first fucking level, or try to. So yeah, it's notorious for how awful its first level is.
Yes. Okay. Brilliant.
Its first level is so shockingly bad. It's like not even a beta.
Yep. Okay.
Of a game. It's you wouldn't even call it a game.
So Scott and I have sort of been talking about doing like a little bit of a mini series on the channel here where we go back and look at some games that were fairly well reviled in their day and see whether they're really as bad as everyone said they were.
Yeah.
I've never played Superman 64. So our first episode of that series is going to be me playing Superman 64 as Scott having a giggle at me while we do so. And so I'm actually really looking forward to seeing this because I've heard so much about it over the years, but never actually ever touched it myself because of everything I've heard about it, right?
And I never got to finish the game because it is hard.
Right.
Like despite how crap it is.
Yeah.
It is also hard. And I actually made myself a decent way through the actual game, like to areas where you got to explore with different and use different powers, like Superman's freeze breath, his X-ray vision, and alike. I got to use those, so I was quite proud of myself that I made it to those sorts of points.
Yep.
But it was really hard, and it was a long slog, and the game didn't persists in not wanting me to play it. And I spent money on this, so I'm damn well going to try and get my money's worth,
no matter what.
I'm damn going to play it, and but funny. Yeah, I'm so looking forward for your first step into
I can't wait. I think it's going to be all right.
Into a larger world.
We've already spent way longer talking about this game than I ever thought we would in this. So let's get on.
Yep.
We've got probably half a dozen or so left in the list here, so we'll quickly crack through them because it's getting quite late here, and I know we've been going for quite a while. Whoa, that's a screenshot, but that is what I want to show you, and that's Pokemon Snap. This was another rental king for us in my little group of friends. We would often rent this out, and I think we rented it out so often, in fact, that my friend eventually just got it for his birthday, so he would stop pestering his mum to print it out all the time, I'm pretty sure. So I'm a big fan of this game. I think this was, and I was surprised that this came around before Pokemon Stadium. I had always thought that Pokemon Stadium was first. But no, apparently Pokemon Snap was first. But it was just such a charming game. I don't know a better word for it than that, honestly.
Yeah.
Did you play much of this one, Scotty?
Yeah. Oh, I had this game myself.
Yep.
I did play it in one of the kiosks, the 64 kiosks.
Again, of course.
And I absolutely loved this because it was my first taste of a 3D Pokemon game.
Yes, right, yes.
You
And
know,
that's
we're
important,
both big fans of Pokemon Red and Blue.
Yep.
And this was, you know, I wanted Red and Blue, but in a 3D world.
Yep.
But not knowing full well that that's too much to ask back in 1999.
Yep.
So we got Pokemon Snap, a rail on
shooter,
the rails,
really.
a rail shooter, really. Yeah. You're just shooting a camera.
Yeah.
We got that, and I played the hell out of it. I'm still to this day pissed off that I could not get the 10,000 point photo of Mew. I got
to this day
99. To this day, I'm still pissed off I couldn't get that 10,000 shot of Mew. But it was a fantastic game.
It is, yeah, and I think it still is. Like
it's beautiful.
This is a game that like. It's like a warm hug. Like it gives me the warm and fuzzies when I think about it, and when I even look at that footage just then, which is from the Switch Online version, which is obviously a bit cleaner frame rate wise. But there's some warm fuzzy feeling, like someone's like, I don't know, like just wrapping me up in a blanket that I get from this game that no other game really gives me. It's just something about Pokemon Snap in particular that does that. Just a very special little title, I think. Not what people, I think, wanted from a Pokemon game on the 64, not what people expected from a Pokemon game on the 64, but certainly one that was well loved, and rightfully so, I think. I only wish its sequel, New Pokemon Snap, was as good.
Yeah.
Right.
Or made as modern.
Rare on a tear. Here we go. Jet Force Gemini, another banger from Rare. This is one that I owned and loved. Quite a difficult game from memory. But a beautiful game. And I think this is the trailer that I'm showing you. The trailer is shit, right? The trailer like does a terrible actual like job of showing the game off, I feel. It's just like all flashes of light and explosions and quick cuts, and you don't actually get a really good look at anything. I remember that though. I remember
the reason for that, Jim.
I remember things fucking exploding when you killed them, and that was pretty amazing. But I really enjoyed this game. I really liked it. I don't tend to like, sort of back in the day. Once I was not a first-person shooter fan, and then once I played GoldenEye, I became I only want to play shooters in first-person guy, and so Jet Force Gemini being a third-person shooter, sort of like, I don't know about this, but it sort of won me over. I don't know how far into it I got, but I did really, really enjoy what I played, and it was another little gem, I think, on the console from Rare again. Multiplayer too, which I don't remember playing multiplayer in this game a lot. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. So I can't speak too much for the multiplayer. I think it's mostly the single player campaign that I remember from Jet Force.
I only ever had the fortune of playing it once.
Okay, it's on the Nintendo Switch Online store library now, so that's pretty cool. Maybe we could go back and revisit it, Scotty, and have another look.
Yeah, but I remember it. I think it was notoriously difficult, and I think also what aided that difficulty is it didn't handhold you.
No,
it told you what your objective was, but it gave you no indication as to where it was.
Yep.
And I think the levels were big from what I recall.
They were linear, very linear, but big.
Yeah.
And it was it was all very like different. I think that's the other thing I liked about it too. Like it was, I don't know, it just felt different to any other kind of space adventure game. You know, not that there were many of those either, I guess, at the time, but like the ant, I can't remember what they were called, the enemies, like just the combat and the gameplay, the look of it, like it was had that kind of Banjo-Kazooie in space kind of vibe to it.
I loved the name of it, and the look of the cover attracted me to it. But I remember my biggest disappointment in it though when I played, because I was looking forward to really playing it, and I got my chance once at a cousin's place, and only that one time, and I was very disappointed by it. But the thing that disappointed me the most is I wanted to play as the dog.
No dog.
And no, I was relegated to some stupid person. It's I don't want to play this person. I want to play as the dog. And I was like,
person and you'll like it, Scott.
I was crushed.
Crushed, I say.
The dog's front and center. It's actually looking at you almost. Like the others aren't even interested
Look at
in
it.
the.
Who's the main character
you.
on that cover? I ask you. The
Yeah,
dog.
it's the freaking dog. It's the dog.
Hey, let's go into, like, we're going directly into another Rare game now. So from Jet Force Gemini, we're hopping over to another big one from Rare. Like, what's this? Hang on. What Jet Force Gemini was October 99, and then in November 99, they pump out Donkey Kong 64. Like, they're unstoppable. Now, I didn't play, again, not a Donkey Kong fan myself personally. I actually think the SNES Donkey Kong games are fucking ugly as sin. I hate how they look, that pseudo 2D model with the, I know, Dom. Wow. Sorry, don't shoot me, Dom.
That's blasphemy, Jim. They
I know,
are gorgeous games.
I can't stand, give me good pixel art any day over the phony 2.5D weirdness of Donkey Kong.
It's I don't even think it's 2.5D. I think it is just 2D. It's just really well done.
Well, the models were like a pseudo 3D, almost photo-esque.
They look like they're almost claymation.
Yeah. They were weird.
They're just
Dom's going to execute
rendered.
me. All right, I'm done. So Donkey Kong 64, I never played. Did you play it, Scott, or not?
No, see, I loved Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2.
Yep.
3 I didn't touch back in the day. But yeah, unlike yourself, I loved the visuals of Donkey Kong Country.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 are two of the most beautiful SNES games to look at, and I didn't think that they could do that with a 3D Donkey Kong game, and so when it came out, I just completely fobbed it off and never touched it. And apparently, it's a bit of a darling. People love it and rave about it. But I never touched it, and I do want to try it one day for sure. But
Dom in the chat, did you play Donkey Kong 64, man? Did you? And if you did, how did it stack up to Donkey Kong Country for you? Seeing as how we don't have much experience to go on for this one. Yeah, I don't know. It's not one that's, again, I'm not a Donkey Kong fan. I'm happy to let this one go. Only a little bit at a friend's house, he says. But yeah, well, if you ever decide to give it another shot, Scotty, that'd be I
absolutely will.
Have a look at it. That'd be
actually, I'd watch you play it. I think Sylvie owns it.
Oh, really? Did you have the yellow cartridge, like the yellow?
Yeah, it would be yellow.
Is that right?
I only know it as being yellow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I only know it as being yellow. I think she does actually have Donkey Kong Country 64.
Yeah, right.
Donkey Kong 64, not Country 64. Yeah, so I will have to give it a go.
You'll have to, and you'll have to stream it so we can see it, see the rage.
Yep.
All right, here we go. The game that I think lots of people were waiting for. Pokemon Stadium to kick off the year 2000 we're in now. So we've crossed the millennium at this point. The 64 still going strong. Came with the transfer pack to let you use your own team of Pokemon in game. Basically, just like there wasn't much more to this game other than the battle stadium, right? Like just taking teams of Pokemon.
It wasn't. You weren't playing the Pokemon Adventure.
No,
you were playing the gym,
battling.
the league.
Yes, you were just battling. There was a few different modes for battling. There's a couple of little mini games in there as well, alongside the stadium. But the battling, I think everybody, I certainly wanted. I wanted the adventure, right? Like that's my favorite thing about Pokemon is the adventure. But Pokemon Stadium is another game that I can't help but get the warm and fuzzies because again we did play it a lot. This is another one that same friend who owns Smash Brothers also owned this, and we would take our Pokemon teams over to each other's house and pit them against each other. And it was I think I owned a transfer pack just so I could play my Pokemon team on his copy of Pokemon Stadium. But yeah, seeing all these, seeing everything in 3D for the first time. Like we saw a bit of it in Pokemon Snap, but this is where we actually get to see them like in action, the way we imagine them, and had been, seeing them. And that was
doing their moves.
Yeah, doing their moves, doing their attacks in a battle environment. And I think it's hard to describe to people who weren't around in 98, 99 who weren't part of like Pokemania during those years. It's hard to describe Pokemania to those people, but it's also hard to describe what it was like seeing those those monsters that you'd raised and loved for years on the Game Boy games and on the anime, to see them rendered in 3D for the very first time in battle was just fucking crazy. Like, it was like, oh my god, we are living in the future. This is amazing. I remember that very clearly. Um, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Pokemon Stadium. A sequel as well. Spawned a sequel when Gold and Silver came out. With a bit more robust gameplay. But this is the one I remember.
I certainly, this is the one I remember too. I never got Pokemon Stadium 2, but so most of my time actually playing Stadium was using the transfer plaque to just use this Game Boy feature to play my game on the TV.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you could do that.
That's where I spent most of my time playing Stadium, was just to play my actual Game Boy copy on the TV, because I didn't have my own Super Nintendo at the time, and I certainly didn't have a Super Game Boy to go in my non-existent Super Nintendo. So this was how I did that. I spent a lot of time playing it.
You are right. I'd forgotten all about that, and I did that too. Pokemon Yellow is what I had. That was my first Pokemon game. That's the one I would use in the transfer pack, and I'm pretty sure I did the same thing. Yeah, right.
I loved that. I loved in Stadium. They also had like its own Mario Party style mini games.
That's right. They had a few little mini games in there.
Yep. They were fantastic. So I could still to this day, I can't get the hang of the drowsy hypnosis mini game. That thing can fuck right off. But I was a fucking champion at the Metapod Kakuna Harden mini game. Where you just try to like split second time your button press to that rock hitting you. It was just fucking I was king of that. I was king of that.
Lots of good memories of Pokemon Stadium.
I loved Stadium, and I was disappointed it didn't have the main adventure in 3D like Jamie. But the battles were awesome. But the one thing the thing that really took the sheen off of it for me, and why it was my least favorite mode, and I never actually ever beat the Pokemon League, and I blame this aspect in the game, was there was something in Pokemon Stadium that when you played battles with your Pokemon in Pokemon Stadium and trying to go through the gyms and through to the Pokemon League, for some weird reason, it must have been the programming, all of your attacks had a far greater, higher rate than normal that they would miss.
Okay.
When I played Pokemon on the Game Boy with my team, rarely would any attack miss. Rarely. And then when I popped that same cartridge and popped my same team into Stadium and played the gyms through using my own team from them, it was rare that they actually fucking hit. It was something weird in the code that just really made attacks like, and I'm talking like they would hit less than 50% of the time for me. I could only get as far as what's the one after Misty, Jim?
Surge. Yeah. I couldn't get further than that. Okay.
Just because on account of it, my Pokemon just regularly miss attacks. Like you do, like I had awesome moves like Surf and Fly that were just devastating one hitters. But they take 2 rounds to pull off. And then when you fly up and then you come down and does nothing. And then you're just at the mercy of whatever you're fighting. I found that so frustrating. So it really took the sheen off of it for me.
Look, maybe you just weren't the Pokemon master you thought you were. Moving on. Let's
right. Both know that's bullshit.
Hey, here's another rare title. What do you know? Another cracker of a rare title. Perfect Dog. We've talked about this in our recent top 10 greatest multiplayer games. ever, and rightfully so. You know, Scott and I ranked this one alongside GoldenEye.
Yeah.
I enjoy GoldenEye's campaign more, I will say that.
Yeah.
But I think what it did was, like, what I remember most fondly about Perfect Dark was that every single weapon had a secondary fire. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yep. An alternate mode, fire mode.
Yeah, an alternate fire mode. And that, so it basically doubled the amount of guns in the game to some degree, right? Because you had its primary fire, bang, 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 and then its secondary thing would often do something wacky or crazy or out there or just insane, and it was glorious. And so that made the multiplayer in Perfect Dark, alongside the addition of bots, customizable bots. We won't go into too much detail on Perfect Dark because we've talked about it at length on that top 10 list. But yeah, the multiplayer in Perfect Dark was fucking so good. So good. Especially having more than four, you know, characters in a multiplayer level at a time.
Yeah.
With the addition of, like, you have your 4 friends and 8 bots, you know, or whatever. And you just have this packed out multiplayer levels, which when you went back to GoldenEye after that, ended up making GoldenEye feel very empty, you know, and slow by comparison. But yeah, just a cracker of a game. Really, really good. I'm hard pressed to pick my favorite out of these. I mean, if you really held me down and put a gun to my head, I'd probably say GoldenEye, just because I've got more nostalgia for it. But you know, they're basically
Sam and Dom giving you daggers.
Yeah, exactly. If Dom's holding me down, forcing me to choose one, I'd probably choose GoldenEye for the nostalgia. But they're both bangers.
Yeah.
All right. So from Perfect Dark, we're nearly done. We're at the tail end of this thing now. Let's have a look at good old StarCraft 64, an RTS on a console. Now, I believe Command and Conquer 64 was a thing, if I remember rightly. I could be misremembering that, but StarCraft 64 was certainly the first RTS on a console I ever played, and I was a big RTS fan. RTS games were, you know, the business in my family. A lot of Age of Empires, a lot of Command and Conquer, a lot of Red Alert, a lot of Dark Reign, a lot of Total Annihilation, all those classics, right? Was not a big Warcraft. I didn't mind Warcraft 2, actually, but was not a big StarCraft fan. But I remember renting this out to give it a shot, just because I was curious, if for no other reason than curiosity, to see how this would actually run on a console. Did you play this on 64, Scott?
I had played it once.
Yes.
For 5 minutes.
Yep.
It was shit. Now I'm coming really to. I'm saying that because I love StarCraft.
Yes.
On PC. Yep. The original StarCraft.
I played a bit of StarCraft. Don't get me wrong. It just wasn't my favorite. But yes, the translation was, you know, they did their best. They did the best they could with the tools they had. Yeah. But at the time, it just didn't quite work.
Yeah, no, and I you know, absolutely, they made FPSs, first-person shooters, work on consoles. Yes. Absolutely, but not every genre of game works on a console. Some you need a fucking mouse.
Yep.
And that is the RTS is that genre. You need a mouse, not a joystick.
Yeah.
You've got a StarCraft 64 had a very bad pixelated zoomed in look compared to the original StarCraft.
Yes, I remember that.
It was hard. You couldn't make out details of anything. You could barely even read the freaking screen. And I can't even remember the freaking trying to view the bloody cutscenes on that thing. I don't even know if it had any because the 64 was just not terribly capable of it. But interestingly, everyone knows StarCraft 64 was shit. So no one bought it. So in a similar fashion to Snowboard Kids 2, it is actually worth quite a bit of money on the secondary market.
Yeah, I know this is a collector's item now, StarCraft 64. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, it's not worth as much as Snowboard Kids 2, so that gives you an idea of how bad that one was.
I've got memories of seeing StarCraft 64 in like bargain bins for fuck all, you know, like back then.
Are you wishing you had cleaned that bin out?
Pretty much.
But yeah.
Oh, Dom says, fun fact, Nintendo actually released an optical mouse for the 64, but only in Japan.
Ah,
Now,
well,
that would have made all the difference.
that would have made all of this. Oh, and also speaking of things that Japan only got
Mm-hmm.
with this 64, they did actually create a disk drive
Yes,
and
they did.
have internet play
Yes.
on certain
So if
games,
you had
and
that,
the
internet
64
connectivity,
DD or double D,
and a mouse, and StarCraft 64.
and some really, like, good glasses,
Yep. You were
because
laughing.
you
You
need to
got the
read this
full
sucker.
StarCraft experience then. And you were set up to play it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just an interesting, I think, like, it's still a little bit of a landmark title for attempting to bring that genre to the consoles, like, didn't necessarily pay off, but the attempt, I
No, but
admire the attempt.
they made the
It wasn't
attempt.
terrible. Like, it wasn't unplayable. I didn't find it unplayable. It was just, it wasn't
Oh,
great.
I certainly
By
did.
comparison to the PC, it was not great.
Yeah, yeah,
It was just too early tech-wise to really,
yeah.
and I don't think
And
it's
they
ever translated
and
perfectly.
the industry kept giving it a go.
They did.
They gave us Aliens versus
Yeah,
Predator Extinction
I
on
kept trying.
PlayStation, Xbox. They gave us Halo Wars.
Halo Wars, yes, I
Um,
remember.
they got they got better, but still, it's a genre that needs a mouse.
That's right. It'll never, like, they can get it as good as they can, but as good as they
Yeah,
can will never be as good as it can be
no,
on a PC. It's just how
no.
it is. All right, one we won't spend too much time on, Scotty, because we've already talked about it quite a bit. And no
Yep.
nukes. Tom says, and no nukes. Private joke. Majora's Mask, the Zelda game that the team shat out in a year and went on to become a huge, not necessarily a massive success at the time, but in retrospect, a massively loved Zelda title. Really different, something very unique.
Yeah.
That it doesn't feel like any other Zelda game in the series, and many other games that are out there, full stop, really. I think this is, when I think about games that are like must plays, I feel like Majora's Mask is on that list of, like, this is a game that if you want to experience something that you won't get anywhere else, this is kind of this is the one to play. Do you like
Yeah.
Majora's Mask, Scott?
I
can't remember.
love it.
You love it. Yeah,
I
you're a
love
big
it.
fan.
It's one of my favorite Zeldas.
Yeah,
easily.
it's one that I need to go back and try. Like, I played a little bit of it, and it wasn't Ocarina, so therefore I didn't like it. It was a bit of like that Mario Kart.
that did take a bit of adjusting for me
Yeah.
too as well when I first played it, since I loved the shit out of
Yeah.
Ocarina too.
But in retrospect, it's one I really
but,
want to go back and revisit when I, like, get the opportunity. I've even got it. Like, I've got a couple of copies of it. I just need to actually play one. So I need to do that, because it's I just want to experience its uniqueness, and see what all the fuss is about, because it looks like, now in my through my adult lens, and not making comparisons, just looking at it as its own thing, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, certainly is.
Yes, but again, you want to hear more about that one, go and check out our Legend of Zelda retrospective on the channel. All right, this is the last one in our list, Scott. We're in 2001 for Paper Mario. Not a game I've played. I don't believe it's a game you've played either.
No,
But certainly a well-loved franchise, but certainly a well-loved game in and of itself. Like, lots of people fucking love Paper Mario.
Yeah. Well, the series is still going.
It's still going, and going strong, Like, they're remaking Thousand Year Door. I think that comes out very, very soon, which I'm actually quite keen to try, because I've never played that either.
Yep.
And
that's one of the most highly regarded
that's the
GameCube
classic,
titles.
that's the one.
Yep.
And this, is another classic that I wouldn't mind experiencing at some point. It's on Switch Online, which is the trailer we just saw there. So that's one I have access to and can go back and play, and maybe I should, because again, I'm not a big JRPG guy, but apparently the writing and humor in the Paper Mario series is, like, top notch, and that I do appreciate that. So I need to go back and give that a shot.
I I can't tell, but I'm just looking at, this is the first time I've actually seen the cover for the 64
Oh yeah,
game,
yep.
and I can't help but point out the little bit of what looks, if you could read it in a certain light, it's like they're fat shaming Mario in the bottom left. Thinner Mario, bigger adventure.
Like
Because
whoa,
Mario
whoa, whoa, whoa.
is known to have a little bit of a paunch
I
in the
know,
front.
right?
Yeah,
Far out. Savage, that one.
yeah.
Passive aggressive. I love that cover. Actually, I think that's a fantastic cover.
It
That's a
is
good
very
cover.
cute. Yeah, I totally missed all the Paper
Yeah, me
Mario's,
too. They
really.
just weren't like JRPGs. Just weren't in my wheelhouse at all. Like I was
Yeah,
playing fucking Perfect Dark and like stuff like that, right?
and having a good time in general.
And yeah, that's
No.
exactly. I was like, waist deep in Pokemon, and I think like Paper Mario just kind
Yeah,
of again, not being a massive Mario fan, Paper Mario
yeah,
in a
yeah.
genre
No,
that I already don't like, it being a JRPG, it just never
it,
appealed
it,
to
it
me.
wouldn't it would have it wouldn't have you wouldn't have
I wouldn't
made
have
it.
if I had to play it
You
back
wouldn't
then.
have
I
given
wouldn't
it a
have
second look.
appreciated it, but that's why I
Yep,
want to play it now. Is because now I think I would.
yep.
I've matured like a good wine.
To it.
Yeah.
Like,
All right, that brings us to the
wow,
end, Scott. Obviously, there was a
wow.
shitload of games that we didn't get to,
Yep,
and many. I'll put a few of them on here. There's many more that aren't in this picture that we didn't get to mention. A
yep.
couple of. Is there any in that sort of list there, Scotty, that jump out at you as being classics that we didn't get to mention that was special to you in some
Yeah,
way or another?
yeah, absolutely.
Which ones? Call them out.
So I call them out. Well, so I owned a few of those. So
Yep.
I owned South Park, Sub-Zero, Mortal Kombat Mythology, Sub-Zero, both of which are shit
Yes.
and utterly crap,
Yeah.
for their own reasons. But Star Wars Episode One Racer was a classic
Yeah.
as well.
That was a good. That was a good
Well,
game.
the 64 had some really good Star Wars titles. Pretty much only four, really, that I can think of.
Yeah, but they were all
Um,
good. There was no
they were all good.
there were no crap ones.
They were
And
all good.
and good racing games. Like there are just lots of good
Yeah,
racing games on the 64 to cater to lots of different tastes. Because you had things like
yeah,
Episode 1 Racer and things like Wave Race.
yeah,
And then you also had things like Cruis'n USA, which was a big favorite of mine. Beetle Adventure
yeah,
Racing was a big favorite of mine. World Grand Prix down the bottom, F1 World Grand Prix. I liked that one quite a bit.
yeah,
San Francisco Rush, Extreme G. I played all of
yeah.
those and liked them all. Again, racing
Wipeout.
games were big in our house. South Park was another rental king for us. South Park's
Oh,
multiplayer.
really? A
Yes.
rental king.
South
Wow.
Park's multiplayer was
It was
like
better than the rest of
fits
it.
of
Yeah, that's
laughter,
for sure.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Like it was
Yep.
so funny, especially getting the what was the gun that
Cow
made
launcher.
them? No, yeah, the cow launcher was funny, but the one that made them sing and dance. What was that one?
Oh yeah, the magical music box
That's the
where
one.
they get zapped, they get rosy cheeks,
Yeah,
and
and they
they
go,
sing a song where they sing,
"Ooh, we're gonna
"I like
get
to
that
sing about the
thing."
mooner and the tuner and the springer. I like to sing."
We're gonna
Yeah, I
get that
remember that. That's
feeling.
from the original South Park episode.
And every time you hit them, it'd start with "ooh, we're gonna get
Yep.
that," ooh, and just keep
Yep.
ooh. That sound is like
Yeah, and they couldn't do
deep in
shit
my
about
soul.
it. They were just stuck in.
Yeah, that's it. And
in
you'd just
that.
be like throwing fucking urine snowballs at them while they're dancing around. And it was just funny. Like it's just
Yeah.
such a funny,
Yeah.
like fun. I've got like there were so many like South Park was actually on my short list for the multiplayer games. Top 10.
Wow,
Just because
wow.
I've had so
That's-
many good
Yeah,
memories of playing that in multiplayer. Shit,
yeah.
single player game, awful. And
Oh
it's
man, and I played that mostly. I did have a couple. I did have a couple of get-togethers where we did play the multiplayer
yep,
and had a shitload of fun. But I was the only one who actually owned the game,
yes,
so I was really good. Everyone else, not so much. So it was a little bit one-sided, unfortunately.
yeah,
But yeah, oh my god, the single-player campaign is just terrible
yeah.
and
It was awful.
extremely hard.
Yep,
But
it was terrible.
But yeah, the multiplayer, you got some good laughs
Multiplayer
out.
was good. You did get some laughs out of it. WCW
Yeah.
versus NWO, I can see down there. That was on my top 10 multiplayer games. That was such a
Yep.
fucking fun game. Gauntlet Legends, I gave a bash at. That was a very repetitive multiplayer game, but a translation of the arcade. Conker's Bad Fur Day is one I never played myself. Did you ever play that?
That came out towards the end of the
It
64's
really
life.
did. Yep, that was
And
right
is
at the tail
also
end.
another one of those high price fetching collector's items.
And really
Not as
well
high
loved.
as StarCraft or Snowboard Kids, but yeah, it is high sought after because it was towards the end of its life.
And I find that funny is that it's, again, another rare title, but you know, you look at it and it's like, oh, it's another game like Banjo-Kazooie.
True.
It's not another game like Banjo-Kazooie. Like, I think about how many kids or how many parents like rented that out or bought that for their kids, thinking that it was like a cute critters game, and got something very, very, very fucking different. But I think, like, again, like the library, I said it at the very start, the library of the Nintendo 64 is incredibly eclectic. It's vast in its, like, you know, like we said at the start, like, how I feel like with the 64, Nintendo made a concerted effort to make this console for everybody, not just for children. There were titles on this thing that ran the gamut from the cutesy platformers to things like fucking Doom 64, right? Like, and everything in between. And I think that's why it had such a good longevity, and it's so well loved, because everybody who, you know, played games during this period of time and owned a Nintendo 64, everybody had games on it that they adore. Like, everybody. It doesn't matter what their tastes were, there was something on the Nintendo 64 that you would like. And chances are it was also good. Not all of them were good. There were a lot of bad games, but you would find something good on there to your tastes, and that was pretty cool, you know, I thought anyway. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us there, Scotty. That's it and done for another 64 another retrospective. This case, the Nintendo 64 retrospective discussion. We've really run the time on this one, but we've had a good time doing it, I think. Did you enjoy yourself, Scott?
Yes. Oh, of course. I always enjoy myself with chatting about my favorite hobby.
Yeah, I know, right?
So
it was worse things we could be doing than sitting around talking shit about, you know, retro video games and consoles that we love, isn't there? So we're going to
playing Superman 64, which
Can't
you're going to be in store for,
bring it on, man. Bring it on. All right, we're going to go ahead and get out of here, people, because we are old, tired men, and it's very, very late here. And my voice
past our bedtime.
It's way past our bedtime. My voice is giving out, having talked now for nearly 3 hours straight. So we're going to go and get out of here. Did you have the 64? Was that one of your favorite consoles? Did you grow up in that era of couch multiplayer, 4 people sitting around playing a game on the system, bumping elbows, sharing good-natured insults? If you did, let us know.
Costing you friends if you played Mario Party.
If you did, let us know your favorite titles from the system, just in case we missed any, or if there's any that we talked about that you love. Let us know downstairs, and we'd love to read about them and sort of share in the nostalgia of the period, because we love this era of gaming a lot. Clearly. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. Thanks so much for hanging out, guys. We really appreciate it. Make sure you keep on side-scrolling, and we'll see you all next time. Take it easy. That's not the outro. God damn it, Paper Mario!